IB Nation, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast brought to you by FanDuel. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Back-to-back weeks where we get to come back to you guys live on a Tuesday talking about a Notre Dame win. And that is a good habit. That's a good feeling, and I hope we can keep rolling on it because I'm in a great mood today. Brian's in a great mood today. Man.
Was it really a win, Trevor? Or was it more like an absolute whooping?
Yeah.
Beat down. Like,
yeah, that's
like saying, like, you know, your dad put belt to the behind and you just said, my father and I discussed, you know, proper etiquette today. No, your dad whooped your behind and now you're not going to act like a fool anymore. That's kind of what happened on Saturday.
My parents and I had a disagreement.
Yeah. No, you got a whooping. That's what you got.
Oh, man, but you're right. Notre Dame absolutely put the work in on Arkansas on the road, 56-13. And now it's time to talk about the Boise State Broncos. And back-to-back weeks, Notre Dame is facing an opponent for the first time in program history. It's exciting times. Brian got to be in the press box last weekend down in Arkansas. Sounded like it was a good trip overall.
Great trip. Yeah.
Awesome, man.
Great people, by the way, in Arkansas. Everyone that I met with, like, I mean, it's been a while since I've, like, had polite servers. Just everyone's thank you. People hold the doors for people. Thank you, Arkansas, for that. And the Fort Smith airport was really tiny, smaller than South Bend, the cleanest, nicest airport I've ever been in. Like the bathroom was like somewhere you'd almost like, you know, like in old school movies, like the bathroom, like had a couch, like it literally had like a chair, a reading area. It smelled good. It was clean. It was nice. Just really, really just a good weekend, good people. And then, of course, getting to watch Notre Dame put an absolute whooping on Arkansas was a lot of fun.
I bet. Oh, I bet. Brian and I, hey, we get to be up in the press box for the first time. I mean, really since last Virginia, the game against Virginia last year, and I'll be up there this week for another first time in program history mark. So that's really exciting to be a part of. But it is their green out, 3:30 kickoff on Saturday. Today, folks, we are talking about what's at stake for Notre Dame. Big picture, what's at stake for the offense, what's at stake for the defense. Part two of today's show, we're going to be talking about Boise State. We're going to take a dive and look at them, big picture, how they've been so far this season, break down some things on offense and defense. Tomorrow, obviously, we'll talk matchups. And then we're going to wrap up today's show with a daily mailbag. So throughout the show, make sure you guys get your questions, comments, concerns in. Put a little MB for mailbag or a little mailbox emoji. Lets us know to set it aside. But Brian, happy Tuesday, man. It's another game week. After the craziness and the weirdness of the start of the season, you know, playing a Sunday night, then a bye week, then a game again, it finally feels like they're in the groove now, and I'm happy about it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, it's a step in the right direction. You know, Saturday's game was not like, okay, they've arrived. Like I see fans, they're talking about playoffs and they're talking about, you know, like, well, you know, where's Notre Dame going to be seated and why are we not ranked higher than 21st? I'm like, because you're 2-2. That's why. You know, like it was a great win. It's just the first couple steps towards what this team needs to be, because in the reality, Trevor, is they're in a situation where this team can't afford to lose again if they want to. You know, they're where they were in going into the fifth game. They're literally going into the fifth game of the year right now, which is going into the Louisville game last year. And at that time, because of the loss in Northern Illinois, because of what was left on the schedule, Notre Dame was a team where you said, hey, look, if you're going to make the college football playoffs, you can't lose again. And that's where they are. And so, unfortunately, this team is used to this. They know how to handle this. And I talked to a source yesterday and said that there was some surprise by the way the team was acting when they came back from the game. In that it wasn't like, hey, we dominated, we're back. It was step one. Business, like, look, hey, that's what we expected to do. Let's now get ready for this next one. Like, it's almost like there was we knew we were going to do that. That's what we're supposed to do. And that to me is like, that was music to my ears. They weren't like, yo, we're back. We're that top 5 team. We wrecked Arkansas. Look out, boys. Is like, okay, one down. What's next? Like, that's what I was told that mentality was. They need to keep that, because you can't. This is where you kind of get into that Marcus Freeman talked about, and I still don't think this team is very good at this. How do you handle success? And how do you handle when everybody thinks that you're that guy? So that made me happy, Trevor. I was like, okay, was this too much of a beatdown? Are they going to kind of come back thinking they're that team again? And you got Boise, NC State, and USC coming up. Like these are all three teams capable of beating you if you revert back. So I was happy to hear that, Trevor. I was happy to hear, like, yeah, okay, we expected to do that. Now what's next? Like, just keep them coming. That had me kind of fired up. And so when you talk about what's at stake for Notre Dame, it's you're in a win or go home scenario. You got to take it one game at a time. And Notre Dame is not going to clinch a playoff berth with a 150-0 win over Boise State on Saturday. And they're not going to be eliminated with a 1-point win over Boise State on Saturday. You got to keep building as a football team. Saturday's not even really about Boise State for Notre Dame. It's not. That's the opponent. We'll talk about them. And I mean no disrespect to Boise State, because that's a good football team. Spencer Danielson's doing a heck of a job with that program. They had a really tough loss to start the season, and they've rallied back, and they're playing better football, and they're coming in 3-1. It's more so about you have to focus on you. You have to get better. You have to keep living up to a certain standard. You have to point to the areas where we're still not where we need to be yet. Because as I said, you and I talked about it upon further review, which, by the way, the two podcasts, part 1 and part 2, are on our podcast platforms. The videos are on the premium board. And then I'm waiting on the second video to upload now. It's should be done in a couple minutes. And then I'll have the film breakdowns we did, one offense, one defense, on the board as well. But the one thing we talked about, Trev, was, you look at this football team and kind of what happened against, Arkansas. It's like, look, it's you have to not only win, but you have to keep getting better. And the scary thing, and this is the point that we were talking about in the upon further view, is this team hasn't peaked yet or really come close to peaking yet. There's areas on offense where they can get better, but especially on defense, there's still a lot of room for improvement on this football team. And that's going to be what we need to see from this football team. And that's what a lot of this focus is going to be on.
Well, you're gearing up for an opponent in Boise State that's sitting at 3-1, and they're coached by a staff and have players on their team that aren't going to be intimidated by coming into South Bend. We could talk first time in program history this, and Boise State fans, I guarantee hopefully we see some of them in the chat throughout the week. But talk about how this is, being talked about as the biggest road game in their program's history, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, this Notre Dame team needs to find a way to get out of their own way, and they weren't able to find a way to get out of their own way in the first 2 weeks. Miami and Texas A&M are quality football teams. They're really, obviously, Miami's the third-ranked team in the country. Texas A&M is now the 6th-ranked team, 5th-ranked team in the country. Either way, both teams are inside of the top 8 in college football. And Notre Dame had opportunities to beat both of them, but they made some mistakes. Miami and Texas A&M capitalized. You're going to have to keep building as a program. Can you handle success? Because this is going to be a team coming to South Bend that is not going to be overwhelmed by playing in the shadows of touchdown Jesus and going up against a team that is loaded with NFL caliber talent. You're not going to find that in Boise State. So this team is going to have to find a way to keep rolling and keep improving. That's Brian, I couldn't agree more. Those are the things that we talk about of Notre Dame. This is more Notre Dame versus Notre Dame than its faceless opponent.
And avoiding the mentality that we are getting as fans, in that we're talking playoffs, we're talking how high can this team get ranked, all those type of things. It's like, no. This football team can't care about any of that. This football team should not give 2 rips about where they're ranked. Nope. This team should not give 2 rips about what the spread is. This team should not give 2 rips about a lot of things. This team should care about one thing and one thing only, and that's being better this week than they were last week. That literally is the goal from here on out, Trev. That is the goal. I mean, you do that because the reason is it's like if you do that, focus on, and this is why it's so important for a team. And there's not a lot of teams that can do this. Notre Dame can do that. Ohio State can do this. I think Oregon now can do this now that they're past Penn State. And they were like that going into the Penn State game. Ole Miss is in a position where they can do that. Miami, Texas A&M to a degree with their schedules. But I'm looking more so as like your roster. Notre Dame is maybe one of 6 or 7 teams in college football where it's like if you play your game, like nobody except one of those other 5 or 6 teams can beat you. Like, it really is that simple. Notre Dame didn't get beat by Miami because Miami has a better roster. Notre Dame lost to Miami on the road by 3 in a game. They played pretty mediocre football the entire game. They lost to Texas A&M, the top 10 team, by a point at home in a game they had multiple double-digit leads because they played some of the worst defense in Notre Dame history. I mean, it was that bad. And yet still lost by a point. And the point is, A&M's not good enough to beat you. Miami's not good enough to beat you. You are capable of beating you. And that's why their focus needs to be on that, playing to that Notre Dame standard every week. Because if you do that, the results will take care of themselves, and then the rankings will take care of themselves. And that's why their focus needs to be on that. And this is a week where this team starts to show, hey, this is where we need to be as a football team. Do this and we'll be fine. And not start feeling good about themselves like we're feeling good about them as fans, talking about, like, I don't need CJ Carr to give 2 rips about the fact of the stats we pointed out about how this is the most points offensively Notre Dame has scored since Joe Montana's quarterback. I mean, that was before I was born, much less before CJ Carr was born. That shouldn't matter to him. Like, so what? That's in the past. What are we going to do against Boise State? Because if you don't do your job against Boise State, no one's going to care that you did what you did, back in something you haven't seen since 1977. And that's where I want to see the maturity of this football team, and that's where the leadership of this football team is going to be challenged. And just like Marcus Freeman, Trev, you and I have kind of been a little concerned about his press conferences in recent weeks. You just watch him yesterday. It was a very different mindset, but last week he was saying a lot of things. You're like, dude, I don't know that. I mean, does he have the answers right now? Like, he's just kind of grasping at straws. And I think he was struggling to figure out what to say last week, but the buttons that they pushed for the most part worked really well. And I think that kind of his mindset was a little bit different. And I think he said something 3 times, I think last week. He talked about, we got to stay together. We got to stay together. We got to stay together. I think he was legitimately concerned about that. Like, being concerned about, is there a fracturing? He has to be smart enough to know that there was definite issues in the locker room. Still kind of are to some degree. But that kind of went on Saturday, eases a lot of tensions. Well,
agreed completely. And we draw a lot of comparisons to last season as well, because you're not going to tell me that locker room was also sunshine and rainbows dropping a home opener to Northern Illinois either. It's always about the response, right, like we've talked about so many times. And so far, they're 2 for 2 in their responses, but you have to keep building. But so what do we know? We know that Boise State is coming to Notre Dame Stadium for the first time in program history. Kickoff is at 3:30 p.m. this Saturday afternoon. Back-to-back games where Notre Dame's playing in the sunlight. How about that? We love that. Right now the line on FanDuel is set. Notre Dame is favored by 20.5 points. The over-under is set at 64.5. So they're also expecting this one to be another high-scoring game. But some of that is going to be because of the amount of points that they believe Notre Dame is going to put on the board. The last time I looked, Notre Dame's their point total is set over under 41.5. Boise State's point total is set at over under 21.5. So they're expecting this Boise offense to put up some points, but Notre Dame to still win relatively convincingly. Hopefully we see something reminiscent of that this Saturday afternoon. But Brian, when we start diving more into what's at stake, let's talk offense. Because this unit is coming off of a performance where they had 641 total yards of offense against Arkansas on the road in the SEC. CJ Carr goes 22 of 30 for 354 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love ran rampant again on another defense. You're talking about a game where CJ Carr hit 7 different receivers, and every player who touched the ball for Notre Dame offensively had at least one gain of at least 20 yards. They put up 56 points. So when you talk about what's at stake for this unit, Brian, where do you start?
Well, number one is just kind of keep doing what you're doing. I mean, finding a way to keep doing what you're doing. That's the most obvious thing. Like, can this offense play better? Sure. Will teams learn to defend them better? Yes. And then those two things can balance itself out. And keep doing what you're doing doesn't mean that you have to score 42 points at halftime of every game, or even 28 points at halftime of every game. Like, that's not what I mean. What I mean is being efficient and explosive, something they've been the last 2 games. There's a higher level of efficiency. There's a high level of explosiveness. They've limited the turnovers. They've turned the ball over once the last 2 weeks, although CJ should have had a pick in the third quarter on Saturday. The difference is, though, there was no plays like that when it mattered. And so, but you don't want to develop any bad habits. It's really just about staying hungry and going out every week and just saying, hey, look, we are a team with an edge. This is a very confident offensive football team. They play with a lot of swagger. And you just watch their body language, almost like they were kind of toying with Arkansas a little bit. It's just like, let's see what we can do here. Let's see what we can do there. You've got to keep that rolling. I mean, that's key number 1, Trev. Keep your mindset where it is. No team, like you talk about, got to learn how to handle success. I'm not worried about the defense having that opinion. Like, one game is not going to get you guys to think that all of a sudden you're the 85 Bears. I do worry about this offensive football team starting to kind of feel good about themselves and, hey, look how great we are. We're amazing. It's going to be harder to do with Mike Denbrock as your OC because, he tends to be a little bit of a, never happy kind of guy, which is exactly the mindset you want to have. Like, yeah, that was good, but let's see if we can do that again against a better team. And I think that's going to be important in this matchup. It really is. And again, this is more about Notre Dame than it is about the matchup against Boise. But that's the biggest thing, Trevor, is you got to keep doing what you're doing. No let-ups, no lack of focus, no feeling too good about yourselves. It's always about what's next. You're probably too young for this, but actually this was kind of before you were born. But like when I was late in high school and my first couple college years, I was more of a WCW guy than a WWF guy. And it was when Bill Goldberg first came out. And like once he started to kind of get hot, after every fight, he'd be like, who's next? Like that was the big thing as he went on this long win streak. And that's kind of the mentality Nerds going to have. Who's next? Bring them up because we're about to do to you what to do to them. But then you've got to go out there and earn it and show it and prove it on a week-to-week basis. That's going to be a big, big part of this game, which means you can't have letdowns at quarterback or offensive line or receiver or running back. You got to stay locked in.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And they're going to have to use that mentality to then start getting other pieces in the offense involved. You have your foundation of what you are exceptionally good at right now. Attacking teams outside of the numbers to the perimeter. Letting 4 and 24, I mean, really, for a lack of better words, just kind of do whatever they want to opposing defenses. I mean, like, I know that sounds a little bit, conceited, but
it's true.
They're doing whatever they want. I mean, in the last 3 games, fed 796 total yards and 16 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. They're doing whatever they want. So you have your core foundation. They're taking shots to Malachi Fields. But now it's about getting some of your complementary pieces involved. That is the next thing that is at stake for this offense. We didn't see it against Purdue. Once we dove into the film, we understood why. Wanted to take away the middle of the field a little bit. It's why we didn't see a whole lot to Raritan, why we didn't really see anything to Greathouse. But now it's time to start getting those other pieces involved because before we know it, it's no longer going to be a secret what Notre Dame is going to try to do on offense. Now, we can have a conversation around if teams can stop it. And I think that's a fair conversation to have. But at the end of the day, you never want to put your offense in a position where they walk into a matchup where the opposing defense knows what's coming at them and you just rely on, well, our dudes are better than your dudes. That might be the case for the rest of the regular season. But if and when Notre Dame makes it to the playoffs, you might not be able to do that. So, Brian, it's time to get some of these other pieces involved.
I think that's a big part of it. I mean, that's going to be, as good as this team has been, imagine what it'd be like if Jaden Greathouse was looking like Jaden Greathouse. I mean, you watched Arkansas, and this is something that you guys are going to watch upon further review. By the way, those are now published on the message board. But if you're watching now, don't go watch it until you're done with this show. But it's not going anywhere. But don't want to see like people dropping out of this show to go watch the upon further review. But the one thing we pointed out is like there was that one play where it's like, who do you defend on this play if you're Arkansas? It was Greathouse, Faison, Malachi Fields, Eli Raritan, and Jeremiah Love all ran routes. Malachi ran a dig. Jeremiah Love ran a wheel. You had a crosser from Raritan and Faison, and then Greathouse is running in and out. And you're like, how do you defend all 5 of these guys if they're all legitimate weapons? And if CJ Carr can get more and more comfortable with Jaden Greathouse, like, then I just don't know how you stop this team. Where he just stops looking for like certain guys and starts focusing more on just reading the defense, which he's pretty, for the most part, doing to a degree. He's getting better about that each week. But if you do that, then all of a sudden you're like, I don't really know what you do to this team. I really don't. I don't know how you stop this team. You're going to have to beat them up front. So I think, getting him involved, I still would like to see something you're going to have to, at some point in time, throw some balls to your number 2 tight ends. Because eventually you're going to get, this is what's happened in the past, is after 3-4 games of 12 personnel, say, okay, well, they're not going to throw that other guy the ball. So when they're in 12 personnel, we can put an extra hat in the box to his side and just have that guy focus on the run. You got to give him something. I don't think Ty Washington or Jack Larson, whoever, needs to catch 15 balls. You got to give him something to make teams fear it. So I think those are all parts of the game plans as well, Travis, getting those guys involved. But yeah, I think a big part of this too, you talk about what's at stake and what this team needs to do. Teams watched what Notre Dame's done the last couple of weeks and the last 3 weeks, and they said, okay, they're this, they're that. We can't just sit back and let this team keep doing it. Like, teams aren't just going to come out and play the same game plans that A&M, Purdue and Arkansas played. Because what those teams have not done a lot the last 2 weeks is blitz Notre Dame. They've tried sitting back and, triggering a guy here and bringing – and then, Arkansas had 3 times on Saturday, Arkansas had a free rusher. And CJ Carr just threw behind it both times. Or they ran outside of it. And so you have to be prepared for the fact that, it's one of those things, Trev, where you have to be prepared for what teams are going to do to you. I expect Boise to bring a lot of pressure. They already bring a lot of pressure anyway. But as they sat back and watched, Purdue sat back and Notre Dame ran all over them. Arkansas sat back, like they didn't press. They didn't sit back. They were more aggressive, but they didn't blitz. And Notre Dame threw all over them and still ran the ball. We got to do something to try to create mistakes. Because if CJ Carr is just going to sit in the pocket and be clean, we have zero chance to even be in the game, much less win it. So you have to be prepared for that, and that's twofold. Number one is anticipating it and having answers already built in. The best offensive minds is you're always trying to stay a step ahead. That's the key. Stay a step ahead, and that's what Mike Denbrock's going to have to do.
Well, agreed, absolutely. Because like we were talking about, man, it's not going to be a secret much longer what this offense is doing to have success. Absolutely agree. Brian, let's flip to the other side of the ball and let's talk a little defense. A little bit of a different conversation. Saw some necessary improvements, some promising improvements. But when we get into the conversation of what's at stake, you have to build on that. You're not there. You're not even close to the finish line yet of the defense that you should be running for this Notre Dame program. So when you talk what's at stake for this defense, Brian, I think you have to start with, you have to continue making adjustments. You have to build on your performance against Arkansas. Can't hang your hat on, we held an offense that averages 43.5 points a game to 13. We've made it. We are going to just run the exact same defense from here until the end of November.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. You can't be that, right?
Can't. Because in a similar conversation that we talked about on offense, at some point, once you put out enough film of what you're doing, good offensive coordinators are going to start to tear you apart. Yeah. Boise State has a very productive offense. NC State has a very productive offense, and so does USC.
Yeah.
Boston College isn't a slouch either on offense.
They're a weird team, but they can throw the ball. They're
sure
good
can.
Where Notre Dame hasn't been good. I mean, look, when you talk about the defense, Trev, it's this is a good step. It's kind of like how I feel about the offensive line. Last 2 weeks have been good steps, but you can't regress. Because even within the last 2 weeks in the offensive line, teams have not I'm shocked that Purdue and Arkansas weren't more aggressive with their pressure packages against a redshirt freshman quarterback. Shocked that they didn't do more of that. And so yeah, it's been better, but can you keep it going? And defensively, it's the same thing. Like you took a big step in the right direction from a production standpoint. You took just a solid step in scheme and technique. And then I think you also took a pretty big step when it came to sort of a more attacking mindset from the players, even though the scheme wasn't more attacking. So that's a step in the right direction. But to your point, Trev, I mean, they're going to see that, say, okay, well, this is kind of what Notre Dame's doing now. They're still vulnerable here, still vulnerable there. If we spread them out, they're more likely to play softer coverage, and then we can find openings. So you've got to continue to evolve as a defense. You can't just say, hey, we're back. Held Arkansas 13 points. We're back. You have to say, okay, this is just a step in the right direction. There's a lot more we have to do. And so the biggest thing for me when it comes to the defense and what's at stake for the defense, it's can you take another step this week and play shutdown football again? Or was last week, because like right now, Trev, you look at the 4 games, last week was an anomaly. Now, maybe it's the beginning of things to come. Sure. I mean, that's the hope that we all have. But if we're just looking at what we know about this football team, last week was an anomaly. And if you wanted to be like a person who's negative, who wants to spin everything to a negative way, here's where you're going. The team was coming off 2 bad losses. They were ready to give up. Their fans talked all week about how their team is going to quit, and Notre Dame punched them in the mouth and they quit. So it wasn't really as dominant as you think. I don't believe that, but you can spin it that way. But however you look at it, it was 1 out of 4 games. Right now, you're batting .250. Even in today's Major League Baseball, that's still not great unless you're hitting 60 home runs, which they're not doing. So you're 1 out of 4 in good performances from your defense. So what we have to learn, and what's at stake this weekend for the defense, Trev, was last week an anomaly, or is it a sign of things to come? And so we're going to learn. We're going to learn a lot more about the defense this week than we will the offense. So, like, if the offense, let's say the offense doesn't have a lights out performance, which, folks, they're going to have at least one from now to the end of the season. They're going to have a day where the offense just isn't clicking. I mean, it happens to every great offense. It happened to Auburn in LSU in 2019. I mean, I think it was Auburn. They scored 23 points in a game in a win over Auburn. Let me pull that
at
up.
Home, 23-20 at home.
Yep, 23-20 at home. They weren't great in that game. There was another game where their defense was solid all year, but against Texas, their defense was terrible, so their offense had to bail them out. Like, you're going to have days where your offense just isn't really cooking. And Trev, there was other games like the Mississippi State game where they scored 36 points. I remember watching that game. They were not sharp in that game. I mean, 36 points is 2 touchdowns below your season average. So if Notre Dame scores 2 touchdowns below their season average, they're like 30. You're going to have a game or two like that. That's okay. It doesn't mean, all the last 3 games are out the window. But if that happens on Saturday, that's the anomaly. That's the thing we haven't seen as much. Yeah, they had a bad first half against Miami, but since the second half, since the middle of the third quarter against Miami, this offense has been kind of hard to stop. They scored 17 points in the second half against Miami in that game. They scored 17 points in the first half against Texas A&M. They scored, 17 points, I think, 16 points in the second half against Texas A&M, right? Because they scored 33 points. You scored 28 points in the first half against Purdue, 28 points in the second half against Purdue, right? Wasn't it 56 is what they scored, right? Back-to-back games. And then you scored 42 points in the first half against Purdue. So, and then you scored two touchdowns in the second half. So, you've been double digits in points every half since the first half of the season. If you have that letdown game against Boise State, you're like, yeah, it's not ideal, but that's the exception to the rule. If the defense has a setback against Boise, it's like, well, last week was just an anomaly. Like, Arkansas wasn't ready to play, blah, blah, blah. You make whatever excuse you want. This is a very important, don't take a big step back this week. Keep building. And it's not so much the points and the yards that I'm looking at, Trevor. It's the way they play. If they give up 21 or 20 points to Boise State and they play good football and Boise's got some good football players, they're going to make some plays. Let's say that happens. The offense gives them a short field. They score whatever. But if we see progress in the way they play, that's all I care about. Because I'll say this to you, Trevor. If this defense can just take baby steps every single week from here on out, by the time we get to the end of November and we're heading into the playoffs, that's going to be a top 25 defense. And that's all they need to be this year. That's it. Top 25 defense. And if they can be that, then this team could do some damage in the postseason. If you can get beyond that, that's even better. But I'm just saying, if you just take a baby step each of the next 8 games, this football team is going to be really hard to beat. Really hard to beat.
Well, that's the biggest question with this unit is can you make marginal steps in the right direction? And that's what we said before the Arkansas game. In one game from Purdue where you're making mistakes against the Boilermakers to a game where you're facing an extremely high-powered offense, nobody with any reasonable expectation should have been expecting to see the Notre Dame 2024 defense against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not – but if you can take marginal improvements, if you can make the same level of improvements that you made from Purdue to Arkansas, from Arkansas to Boise State, that tells us that, okay, now it's slowly starting to become a pattern. Not so much the anomaly to your point, Brian. It's, okay, keep making marginal improvements. And that's the only expectation. It has now left me, and this is just me personally, but it has now left my mind. It's like, at some point, this team's going to be the 2024 defense. It just isn't. And I've accepted that fact. And I'm okay with that fact.
But I'm not expecting. I'm not waiting on it. If it you could say it's not going to happen. I don't know that I agree that it's not going to happen. I think where you and I are, I'm not expecting it to happen.
Sure.
There's the talent to do so, but I don't expect that they're going to push the buttons needed to get all the way there.
Sure.
Is that maybe a fair way of saying it? Like, I'm not expecting it. I'm not expecting them to become that defense, but they're certainly capable of being it, in my opinion. Talent-wise.
Yeah, talent-wise, they're absolutely capable. Do I think they get there? No, I don't. That because of the new system that's in place, the list goes on and on and on. But the other thing that's working in this defense's favor is they don't have to be the same defense from last year because they're not playing with the same offense that they had last year. It's all about complementary football. That doesn't mean because Notre Dame's offense is throwing up 44 points a game on average, I'm okay with the defense giving up 43. It's not where I'm coming from in the slightest. But to Brian's point, if this just becomes a top 25, a top 30 defense, somewhere in that range, this is going to be a really, really good football team. A really good football team. Because of the way that the offense has been performing, they don't have to hold teams to 13 points in the regular season to win. They just don't. Because we were talking about in the postgame show, Brian, what does an off day look like for this offense? I don't know, 30 points. And so that's where they're at, truthfully. Now, again, they have the skill to get there. Totally agree with that. Absolutely. I just don't have the confidence that they're going to reach 2024 level of performance on the field, numbers to back it up, schematics, all that stuff. But big picture, I'm with you. That's what's at stake this weekend for this defense.
It is. I mean, and look, what are some of the things that we need to see? What are some of the baby steps they need to take? Another step in aggressiveness. That's the biggest thing for me is like you saw a little bit more willing to bring 5 or 6. There was a play in the first half. They brought 6. I was like almost passed out. I didn't know if I was me shocked that they brought 6 or the heat since we were in an outdoor press box, but I felt like I was about to pass out.
It's the first play.
Right. And so that's continue to do that. They were a little bit tighter with their coverages, be more aggressive. Trev, one thing we broke down on, and you guys will see film of this, but there was 2 or 3 plays I think we showed on the film breakdown where like multiple guys had really good pass rushes. There was all D-line can't get pass rush. We showed a play where Jared Dawson, Bryce Young, and Boubacar all had great pass rushes. But Taylor Green took 1 step back, 2 quick gathers, and the ball was gone because they were playing soft coverage. 9-yard completion like it was nothing. Like, well, I don't care if you have Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor, and Derek Thomas in their prime. If the quarterback's taking a step and a half and throwing the ball, they're not going to get to the quarterback. It was and on that 1.5 step, it was like 1 and then 2 quicks. Boubacar still hit him right when he threw the football. And there was another one where it's like he catches it, takes his 3-step drop, and the ball's out. Like, you're not going to get to the quarterback that way. So there needs to be still a little bit more. I really believe if Chris Ash, even when playing zone, again, I'll say it again for the main time, this isn't zone versus man. This is a mindset of being technically sound, schematically sound. Be more aggressive with not allowing the easy access throws that are of less than 10 yards. Be more aggressive rerouting, knocking guys off course, making that quarterback hold the ball for one more second, and then see what Boubacar can do. See what Jared Dawson can do. See what Junior Chulamaka can do. See what Josh Burnham can do. Bryce Young can do. Jared Dawson can do. Gabriel Rubio can do. Jason Onye can do. And the list keeps going on and on and on. Give them a chance to be more effective instead of just assuming they can't rush the quarterback, when in reality, the ball's coming out so dang quick that no one's going to get to the quarterback there. So those are still areas where we saw improvement at times on Saturday, but then there's also some snaps where they weren't doing what they needed to do. So just being a little bit better there, being willing to be more aggressive there is something I want to see. We showed a play, Trev, where they ran a 3-man pass route. Notre Dame dropped 7 guys into coverage, and 2 of those 3 guys were open. Like, there was still some of that. Well, yeah, Taylon Green couldn't hit that. Dante Moore will. Ty Simpson will. You know what I mean? Like, that's where there's still room for improvement.
Agree completely about Ty Simpson. Jade Maeva can hit that.
Right.
Dylan Lonergan.
CJ Bailey will hit that.
CJ Bailey will hit that.
Ben Branson. No, never mind. I went too far. I went too far.
No. Oh, my goodness.
Although he had a big game against San Jose State. But, yeah, let's not get carried away.
Okay, so not all, but point being, there are still some legitimate quarterbacks, even in your regular season schedule, that are going to be able to hit that. Those are the marginal improvements that we have to continue to see. Because regardless of who you're going up against, that just has to be better, straight up. And if they can start moving in the right direction, then they'll be in a really good spot. I agree. Brian, any final what's at stake for the defense?
Yeah, confidence. That's what's at stake. The win last week gave them confidence, and now that needs to continue. Take that next step. That's the biggest thing for them. It's, you took a good step. Now it's time to take and build on that. Because this team is still not one that they played more confidently on Saturday, but there were still plenty of snaps where you could see there was some uncertainty of what they're doing. That's the key. Somebody, Broke Neck Boy, said that Brian Jenks' dude might throw for 350 now. Bruh, no. No. It ain't happening. I'm just telling you right now. It ain't happening. Not that dude with those receivers. I don't care if they played like they did against A&M. That's not happening. That's not happening.
No.
But, yeah, I get it. But that's what's at stake, is this building confidence. The more confident they are in themselves, the more confidence they gain in Chris Ash, the more they'll make plays, even if the scheme's not great.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, folks, that's going to do it for part 1 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to talk the Boise State Broncos, who are coming to South Bend for the first time in either program's history. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we'd greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But we talked about it. There's all film reviews up now on the premium message boards, boards.irishbreakdown.com. Go check out the film reviews from upon further review after this show is over. But as always, that is the best way to support what we do here, boards.irishbreakdown.com. Also, remember, we do have a mailbag at the end of the show. We have a couple of questions, comments in there already, but make sure that you get those in throughout the show. That way we can get those answered at the end once we wrap everything up. Brian, in part 2 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by FanDuel, we're talking the Boise State Broncos, who are traveling to Notre Dame for the first time in program history. They are 3-1 on the season. They've rebounded well since that, honestly, kind of a shocking blowout in week 1, 34-7 to South Florida. And obviously they're getting ready to face Notre Dame, who is now on a 2-game win streak. But this is going to be an interesting matchup for Notre Dame. We're talking about a team who they didn't have to utilize the transfer portal that much. They had a lot of players come back from their team from last year. Their quarterback comes back, tight end comes back, one of their receivers is back, handful of defensive players are back, impact defensive players are back. They have one of the better tackles that Notre Dame has faced this year. So this is a talented football team. that's coming to South Bend. We'll get more into the matchups tomorrow between Notre Dame and Boise State. This is more just big picture Boise State. And they're led by head coach Spencer Danielson, who's been off to a really hot start since taking over as head coach. This is a fun football team to talk about, man.
They're a fun team to watch. They're a well-coached football team. You know, they play hard. The opener was a weird game. It was so out of their character. They just didn't have fire. They just didn't look like a typical Boise team. I think they've rebounded pretty well, relatively well since then. They've won 3 in a row. But like this is a key period for Spencer Danielson, not just this game, but coming up for Boise State, because they've got some opportunities to earn some important wins and really go on a streak here where even if with a loss to Notre Dame, there's still opportunities for them to really finish with a 9-10 win season if they can keep doing what they're doing. So I like what Boise's doing. They've got good talent. I would argue that in certain spots they have more talent than Purdue. In certain spots they have more talent than Arkansas. Like, for example, D-line. Arkansas is bigger, a little stronger, but I think Boise's more athletic on the D-line. I think Boise's linebacker core is comparable. I think that Boise's offensive line is every bit as good as just about anybody they've played so far. They've got big play backs. Maddox Madsen's more of a game manager, just, do your job kind of guy. The receivers are just kind of okay. So they're not like this loaded team where it's like, guys, this is like this. If you guys thought they were dangerous when Kellen Moore was there, wait till this isn't that same team. They're not that. But this is still a good football team. This is a far more talented football team than the one that Thomas Hammock brought into South Bend last year in early September. And so it's a team that Notre Dame's got to be prepared for. But I think that Spencer Danielson's also, this is a learning year for him as a coach, because it's a lot easier to instill certain mindsets and mentalities when you have a guy like Ashton Jeanty. And now you're learning to say, okay, we've got to be more of a team as opposed to a bunch of supporting cast for Ashton Jeanty. And the players are learning to, okay, last year you just kind of relied on Ashton was going to do his thing, and I just got to compliment him. What we haven't really seen yet, Trevor, is nobody stepped up to be the guy on offense. Now, I'm not talking, when I say the guy, I'm not talking about the guy that's going to make up for his production. But when the game was on the line, either catching or running, Ashton Jeanty was the guy that was going to have the ball in his hands. And now it's like, who's that guy for them? And they're still in a learning process about themselves. And I think the same thing is true for their defense, is they're in a little bit of a different situation as well. So I look forward to this game, and I really respect the job that Spencer Danielson's doing. His press conference yesterday, he's saying nice things about Notre Dame, but I continue to be impressed about him. He talks about his faith a lot in a very genuine way. The players seem to absolutely love playing for him. He's always super respectful to the opponents. I like the guy. He's hard not to like. And anytime a coach is talking about Jesus and then you hear things about how he lives that life, you're like, yeah, it's great. Because Hugh Freeze used to talk about Jesus all the time too, as he's taking his, credit card strip clubs, right? He seems like one of the good guys in the profession, and you want to see guys like that win. Just like we've praised Marcus Freeman for comparable things. And so, that there was this quote that that Nick Saban made that I think was on Game Day this week that people put on social media, talking about when he really became a good coach and how he's not a transactional coach. And I thought Marcus Freeman made a phenomenal comment similar to that yesterday about these guys aren't cars. It was about the Jade Mickey comment. And you're like, this is a guy that understands his purpose goes deeper than just winning a bunch of football games. Spencer Danielson reminds me a lot of that as well. I think he's kind of in the Marcus Freeman category of, hey, my job is to win games, obviously, because I don't care how good I develop young people if we're not winning games, but I also take the same amount of pride in what kind of young men am I producing. And I root for guys like that. And so I think what you're seeing on Saturday is a battle of two of the, in my opinion, two young coaches who have a lot of potential to be kind of the names of the profession here in the next decade, but two guys that understand what coaching is all about at this level. Yes, you have to win. Yes, you have to teach the game. Yes, you have to call plays. But it's also about, do you value developing young people? And I think we have two coaches that get that. And that's one thing for me. I try to look at things like that, Trev. That's something that I really look forward to and appreciate about this game as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Spencer Danielson's one of the good ones. He really is. And his kind of ascension was honestly pretty similar to Marcus Freeman's. They live their lives very similarly. They have very similar approaches to how they coach. Spencer Danielson was the defensive coordinator at Boise State from 2021 to about really the first 3 quarters of the 23 season. And he was asked to take over really 2/3 of the season. He was asked to take over the final 4 games, goes 3-1. Then obviously we know what he did last season. He goes 12-2, wins the Mountain West, gets a bye week in the first ever, or bye week. He gets a bye in the first ever 12-team college football playoff. And I know the final score doesn't reflect it, but again, it goes back to what I said at the start of the segment. They went into this game in the quarterfinals against the Big Ten runner-ups and didn't flinch. There were just moments in the game where it's like, okay, these are just, they have more horses than we do. But never once did they flinch. And that's the type of football team that you can expect to come to South Bend this week.
Did that to Oregon.
Yep.
Did that to Penn State.
Yep.
They just have good enough players in both of those games. And they're not going to be afraid of Notre Dame. And the South Florida game was just kind of one of those days. It's just like we all have them. It's kind of like how Notre Dame played against Northern Illinois last year. Like, it just is one of those days. And I think that was a wake-up call for them. But to your point, Trevor, this is not a team that is not going to be intimidated by playing in Notre Dame Stadium. They played in the Fiesta Bowl was when they played last year, right? They've played in the Fiesta Bowl. They played at Oregon. You know, like they're not going to be afraid of the moment. They're going to come here and they're going to give Notre Dame their best. And they've gotten healthy too, because like they had a bye week 2 weeks after that. App State was a bit of a blowout. They could kind of get guys, some backups in the game and stuff like that. But this is a team that's going to come in here and it's not the lazy, you're going to get everybody's best shot. There's so many phrases that people use that I'm like, yeah, that's so like not even remotely close to being true. Like there's a debate going on in the chat right now. Like it's not the X's and O's, it's the Jimmys and Joes. That's false. It's both. Well, look at LSU in 2009. It was all about they had the same guys in 2018. So why did the same guys in 2018 average 30 points a game and the guys in 2019 average 50 points a game? Why? Could it be maybe, I don't know, Joe Brady showed up and the coaching and the X's and O's unleashed the talent? They weren't untalented when their offense was mediocre the year before, just like they weren't untalented when they went crazy and it was all the coaching the next year. It was both. Another one that you hear is, you're going to get everybody's best shot. No, you're not. Mentally, you may, but not everybody's going to give you their best shot. The teams that come in unafraid are going to give you their best shot. Do you think did Notre Dame get this is their Super Bowl? Did that look like the Super Bowl for Arkansas's players? Did you get their best shot on set? No. It's about a team that has the mindset, the right mindset to play a team like Notre Dame. Northern Illinois was not afraid of Notre Dame when they came to play Notre Dame last year.
Nope.
They were not afraid of Notre Dame. Florida State was. That big difference. Boise's a team that will come in with the right mindset because this is not the biggest game they've played in the last year. They played a bigger game in January. It December? That game was still in December, right? It was December. They played a bigger game in December. So they're not going to be intimidated. They are going to come in and give you their best shot. Now, if Notre Dame also gives Boise their best shot, this game won't be close.
No.
But if you kind of just say, oh, G5, we're way better, they can make this a ball game. And that's what I like about this Boise State football team is they didn't get shook by the loss to South Florida. They bounced back, have won 3 games impressively. They're going to be fine. They're going to be fine.
Well, let's dive into this a little bit deeper then, Brian. Let's talk Boise State's offense. And this is an interesting unit. They promoted basically their tight ends coach / co-offensive coordinator last year to full-time offensive coordinator, which I thought was a good move. I always love when they do that in-house. Talk about Nate Potter, their new offensive coordinator, but he's somebody with familiarity of the offense. They returned Maddox Madsen, who was their starting quarterback all last season. Latrell Caples was one of their leading receivers from last year. Matt Lauder, who I'm honestly pretty surprised they haven't done more to get him going this season. I thought that was interesting. But they return a host of good offensive linemen, especially their left tackle. He's a really good player to keep your eye out on. Talking about Cage Casey, So there's a lot of good things working for this offense. But to your point, in week one, I think that they were just trying to figure out who they were without Ashton Jeanty. And that's just what they ran into. And I think over the last couple of weeks, they're starting to find that out a little bit. And it's starting to reflect in the numbers. It is, because this is an offense that can put up yards, put up points, and put up yards in both ways. It's not just they only pass the ball well or they only run the ball well. They're pretty balanced. So this is a good Boise State offense coming to town.
It is, Trev, and you know, when you look at the Broncos, we'll pull up the stats here real quick, and we'll kind of, you know, look, we're not going to sit there and tell y'all like, hey, they've gotten really tested since then. Like since that first game, boy, they've played a gauntlet of a schedule, and they've really rebounded and done a great job and all these type of things. No, they haven't, but they did what a good team is supposed to do when you have to play the teams that they play. I mean, they've gone out and they've had to score a lot of points. I mean, look, it's funny. Air Force is one of the weirdest teams in college football right now. Air Force is 1-3, and they're scoring 37.8 points per game. Air Force in their 3 games has scored 49, 30, 37, and 35 points, and they lost their last 3 games, scoring 30, 37, and 35 points because they're giving up over 40 points a game. Boise did what they needed to do to them, you know, and went out and handled their business against them. The most yards they've given up in a game this year, Air Force, is 535, other than the 592 that Boise scored. The highest yards per play was Utah State's 8.5, and Boise had 10.2. And so, like, yeah, you're not playing very good teams, just like Notre Dame didn't play a very good team against Purdue or Arkansas and blew them both out. That's what you're supposed to do. So, like you said, Trev, this offense is heated up. They went for 637 against Eastern Washington, 592 against Air Force, 473 against Appalachian State. They've thrown for over 300 yards the last 3 games. And that's the thing that kind of makes me a little bit nervous, is the fact that this is a team that this year for Boise has been much more dangerous throwing the football. And I think that's the thing that they had to learn in the game against South Florida, is we're not going to be able to just kind of run the ball the way we need to. We need to be a better passing team. And so you look at those pass game numbers, they rank 20th in the country in passing yards per game. They're 14th in yards per completion. They're the 50th in rating, has more to do with the opening game than it does anything overall. You know, but you know, they're a team that right now is much more dangerous throwing the football than they were last year. And they're not the running team they were last year, obviously, but they're no slouches running the football right now either, Trevor. They ran for $122 in the first game. Since then, they ran for 328 against Eastern Washington, 282 against Air Force. And then they were down to 152 against App State because, like I said, they're not the same rushing team they were last year, but they can rip off big plays. They've got several backs they'll throw at you. So it's a much different looking offense than it was a year ago, when, you know, this Boise team was one where you were basically, if you could shut down Ashton Jeanty, you were going to stop Boise State. And that's what Penn State did. Penn State said, we're going to make you beat us with somebody else. And they made a couple plays here and there. Matt Lauder had a couple big plays, but they just couldn't consistently move the ball well enough. Well, now their best part of their offense right now is throwing the football. You know, and that's something that's been a big part of what they've done offensively, Trev, is they've adapted. They're not trying to, you know, replicate the offense that they had last year against, you know, with Ashton Jeanty. Here's the other thing. They turned it over 3 times against South Florida. They've had 1 turnover since then.
I was just about to say, the one thing that sticks out to me about this offense, man, is they don't do a whole lot to hurt themselves, especially in the last 3 games. Maddox Madsen's only thrown 1 interception. That's 8th in the country. They only have 4 total turnovers, and 3 of them came in their season opener. And even when you go back and look at the negative plays, they've only allowed 3 sacks. And that includes the first game against USF. That ranks 9th in the country. Tackles for loss allowed, they rank in the top 40 in the country. And I'd be curious, I haven't gone and looked this up, but I would be curious to see how many of those tackles for a loss came against USF. So since then, this has been an offense that's really not shooting themselves in the foot too much. They're taking advantage of their opportunities, and they're coming together as a unit. You don't average 520 yards per game on accident. You just don't. And again, we can have a conversation around the level of the opponent, but Brian, you said it best. They did what they should have against the level of competition that they were playing. They did. And as long as you can do that, you're going to be in a really good spot moving forward. Yeah, sure, you didn't play anybody. Okay. I think that's a healthy conversation to have. Well, what did you do against those nobodies? Well, on offense, assuming that my computer loads here, you put up 51 points against Eastern Washington, 49 against Air Force, and 47 against App State. Your lowest out point has been almost 7 offensive touchdowns each week. It's really, really impressive. It is.
Well, and Trev, like, you could say, well, yeah, but what about that opener? Well, couldn't you say the same thing about Notre Dame then, if you wanted to go there? Well, yeah, Notre Dame has scored a lot of, didn't do well offensively in the opener, but look what they've done since. Well, they haven't played a defense nearly as good as Miami since the opener either. But what we can say is we can look and say to Notre Dame, but yes, if Notre Dame played Miami now, I think things would look different. Like, that's because they've evolved, they've gotten better, they're performing better. Same thing with Boise State. And you look at it, they had 30 points by halftime against Eastern Washington. They had 21 points at halftime against Air Force. They scored more points in the second half of that game than they did the first half of that game. And the reason that matters is because it's not like they're just jumping up on teams. They had to show some adversity in that game. They weren't playing great early and then had to make some adjustments and then go out there and get better. So, that's kind of where it's at, Trev, is you've got to be able to evolve as a team because every team is different. Notre Dame's evolving. Boise's evolving. And that's what makes them offensively a dangerous team. The surprise for me with Boise this year, Trevor, has been more their defense. I really thought their defense was going to be good again this year. That's the part of their team that's kind of struggling right now. And even in some of their wins, I don't think their defense has not really blown me away so far this year in a way that I thought it was going to. They were pretty darn good against App State, like really good. They got shredded by Air Force, and they got ripped up for a lot of big plays against USF as well. And USF missed some opportunities in that game as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they absolutely did. I mean, look, when I look at this defense, big picture, when it's good, it's pretty good. When it's bad, it's pretty bad. And I think that's reflective in some of the stats. They rank 101st in the country in rushing touchdowns allowed, 109th in the country in 30-yard completions allowed. Not a stat that I would love to be looking at going up against this Notre Dame offense, but we'll get more in the matchup tomorrow. They have yet to hold a team scoreless in the red zone. And when I mean scoreless, I don't mean for a game. I mean on a possession. Anytime a team gets inside of the 20-yard line on this Boise State defense, they score. They put points on the board. Touchdowns and field goals. But then you look at some of the other numbers. They rank 25th in the country in interceptions generated. They have 5. They rank 38th in the country in sacks generated. Tackles for a loss needs to be a little bit more improving, but I wish Notre Dame had 25 tackles for a loss on the season right now. Man. So this defense, especially when you go and watch them, this defense, when it's on, it looks pretty good. It looks like, Brian, to your point, the defense that we thought we were going to see coming out. But then where they falter, it's big, big falters.
Very inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
Very inconsistent. And the big plays is a big part of that. I mean, you look at that, Trevor, and they've given 8 big plays in 4 games against a not very comparable schedule to them. That's been the thing that's been interesting. And their rushing numbers are a little bit skewed by playing a triple option team. That is the one thing I will say. They've been more vulnerable to a good pass team than they have a good rushing team. Air Force ran for, it's like 260. Let's see here. Give me a second. Let me pull up there. Air Force ran for 268. Their other 3 opponents ran for 117, 117, and 109. They held South Florida to 117 yards rushing. South Florida is not a great rushing team by any stretch, but they held them to 11 fewer yards than what Florida gave up rushing the ball, and they held them to fewer yards per carry than what Florida allowed also. So but they haven't faced anything like what they're going to face against Notre Dame. And the question is going to be, are they going to be able to generate enough of a pass rush and enough pressure against Notre Dame? That's true for Notre Dame as we look at Boise throughout the year. That's going to also be an issue. Being able to be more disruptive is going to be an issue when they play like UNLV, Because you look at the numbers, and if you're just looking at this here, Trevor, it looks great, right? I mean, hey, man, 38th in the country in sacks and sacks per game. Well, they got one in the opener, one against Eastern, one against Air Force, and then 5 against App State, who's not good. So like they've got some things that on paper look okay, but overall, I've just been very disappointed by this defense, especially for what I was expecting of them. We had 2 guys in their D line that were on our all opponent team, first or second team. And we had a linebacker, I think, that was on your second team. They had a couple DBs that we looked at. So their defense has been the thing that, honestly, I've been most surprised by this season. And they're going to have to turn that around. And Spencer Danielson's a defensive coach. So I would expect that that's going to get a lot of the focus this week. And the one thing about them is part of it is they are an aggressive team. They're going to bring a lot of pressure. They're going to blitz. They're going to bring guys from different places. And I think sometimes early in the season that can make you vulnerable to big plays. I think that's been a bit of an issue for them so far.
Yeah. One of the things that's interesting about this team overall, and you hinted at it, and I agree completely, is some of their dudes that we thought were going to be dudes haven't been this season. I was expecting to see a little bit more out of Matt Lauder so far through the season. Right now, he's their fourth leading receiver. He has 13 receptions on the year, 148. I mean, we're talking for somebody that went for over 90 and a touchdown against Penn State.
He's second in catches, but he's 4th in yards and significantly 4th.
Yeah. I thought that he was going to be a little bit bigger addition to the offense. I mean, when you go and you look at some of these FanDuel numbers, Matt Lauder right now for receiving yards, his over-under is set at 38.5. If you would have told me way back in the preseason that's what his over-under was going to be set, I was going to add, I mean, is he coming back off of an injury? Is he, so I thought that was interesting when you take a look at his. And then on defense, Jaden Vergen-Morgan, I mean, he's somebody that, he led the team last year in tackles for a loss. He had 15. And so far through the first 4 games, he has 2. So I thought that was it. Matter of fact, their team leader right now for tackles for a loss is a safety. It's Ty Benefield. Which I thought was interesting.
Now, here's the interesting thing about this Boise's team. Number one, this is the first year that Nate Potter is the full offensive coordinator. I think that's part of this too, is as an offensive coordinator, he's learning his way. If you remember, Dirk Cutter, the former Boise head coach, was their OC last year. He was going to retire. Nate Potter was kind of in a grooming period. He's taking over. Here's another interesting thing for Notre Dame fans to keep in mind. Do you know who their 2 defensive coordinators are, Trevor? They have 2 coordinators. One of them is, I know you know the answer to this. One is Eric Shannander, who has been with Boise since 2023. He was at Nebraska as their defensive coordinator from 2018 to 2022. Their other co-coordinator is a guy by the name of Tyler Stockton, former defensive lineman at Notre Dame. So there's a little bit of an interesting nugget there, Trev, that but Tyler's going to have to get this thing, him and Coach Eric are going to have to get this thing turned around, because if they're going to run the table the rest of the way, look, Boise's in a tough spot as far as a playoff repeat. If they don't win this game against Notre Dame, if they beat Notre Dame, they're right back at the top. Like, I don't care what Memphis does. Like, they're going to have that feather in their cap over Notre Dame. They lose to Notre Dame, they need help, obviously. But they're in control of their own destiny in regard to the Mountain West, because they will have no conference losses with two losses. The things that we're saying are not just true for Notre Dame, because I don't know that Boise's capable of beating Notre Dame. I don't know that Notre Dame's going to overlook Boise State the way they did Northern Illinois, because it is Boise State. It is because, as Marcus Freeman mentioned yesterday, since 2000, they're second in all of college football in wins. I think is Alabama one or is Ohio State one? Who's number one? It's probably one of those two.
I think it's Ohio State.
Yeah. So that's impressive. These players are going to be made aware of, and most of these kids grew up with Boise State being a really good football team. So I don't think they're going to overlook them. These are things that, because we're previewing Boise not just with Notre Dame, but just their season in general. They're going to need that against UNLV. they're going to need it against San Diego State, Colorado State, Fresno, Utah State. They're going to have to be a better team defensively moving forward, even after the Notre Dame game. They're going to have to find some ways to get more pressure on the quarterback, to kind of get that aggressiveness back. Like you said, they are forcing some turnovers so far, if you just look at the raw numbers. But again, that's the funny thing is the game where they forced the most turnovers, it's the game they lost. They forced 3 turnovers from South Florida. But it's just, for the rest of the year, their offense is going to have to get better. The good news is, after this game, they are going to be home for a couple weeks. And this is going to be their 3rd road game already. So rest of the way, I think if I'm doing the math correctly, that's 4 home games and 3 road games rest of the way. Boise still got a shot to do damage and be a potential playoff team this year. They're going to need help, but they've got to keep this game against Notre Dame close. It's like, and when I mean close, I mean it can't be like Navy and Army last year. It's got to be like a 10 to 14 point game where maybe you're never in it, but like, boy, that was respectable. And then you look at Notre Dame goes out next week and beats NC State by 30, beat Arkansas by 43 the week before, and then there's that 12-point, 10-point loss to that you had. That bodes well for them moving forward. But like, there's still some good football teams left on their schedule that they're going to have to be prepared for and handle, and their defense improving and being more consistent in the run game are going to be the ways that they get that done. And I'm hoping that they do that, not this game, because I always root for former Notre Dame players, so I'd love to see Tyler Stockton help turn that defense around.
This is an interesting weekend talking about playoff implications for the G5, because this is the first time that either Boise State or Navy are playing like opponents. Yeah, I mean, as we talked about in the season, we thought that the G5 bid race would come down to Boise State and Navy. Well, Boise State's already played USF. They've already played Air Force. Navy has Air Force this weekend, and Boise State has Notre Dame this weekend. And later on in Navy's schedule, they have both Notre Dame and USF. So I think this is more big picture for just Boise State specifically, but this is when stuff like that starts to unfold, because when you have 3 like opponents, I think that will get held in a certain light when the playoff committee starts evaluating resumes.
Yeah. It's obviously Memphis right now, I think, is probably in pole position with the G5, but Boise's not out of it yet. Navy's obviously in a good position. They're undefeated. So it's gonna be interesting, Trev, to kind of see how the G5 kind of shakes out this year. There's some decent teams out there this year, but I don't know how good some of those teams really are. I mean, we still have a lot to learn with some of these teams and who they play. It's the MAC's pretty much out of it. They're having a rough year this year, but New Mexico's 3-1. Boise's got to play them in a couple weeks. They play San Jose State this weekend. San Diego State's 3-1, coming off of a big blowout win over Cal. And I still don't get that one, dude. A team that got killed by Washington State beats Cal 34-0, and then a week later beats NIU 6-3. It's been such a weird year already. UNLV's undefeated so far. Fresno's 4-1, and their only loss being at Kansas. So it's still very much wide open. G5. Boise needs a competitive loss to Notre Dame to stay in the mix. If Notre Dame absolutely steamrolls them this weekend, they're going to need a lot of help to get back on track. And I think South Florida also is being written off a little bit too soon as well. That's just kind of my 2 cents on that, just because like they lost to Miami and now like they're not a story. I think they're still very much a story, in my opinion. And you look what's left on their schedule. They've got to play at Memphis. They got to play at Navy. So the G5 race is going to be very fun to watch this year. Last year everybody kept waiting on Boise to lose again. Nobody else was sniffing Boise last year. Nobody's coming close to Boise last year. At the end of the year, Boise would have been a playoff team last year, no matter what. Like they finished, I think, 9th. So yeah, they got a bye because of the seeding thing, the high force ranked automatic bids. But the way that they ranked, they were in no matter what. They'd have traveled. They'd had to go play somebody, but they would have been. I think they finished 9th, right, Trev? Weren't they 9th in the final ranking? So they'd have been traveling somewhere in round one. They were a playoff team no matter what last year. Now they're going to need some help. Now they're going to have to hopefully be the highest ranked G5 team. And the good news is the teams ahead of them, there's probably 6 or 7 teams ahead of them right now, in my opinion. They all have a lot of games against each other and some against Boise. Boise's got to play San Diego State on the road. They got to play undefeated UNLV. They got to play 3-1 New Mexico. So there's still plenty of opportunities for 4-1 Fresno still on their schedule. Plenty of opportunities for them to show who they are.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for part 2 of today's show. Don't go anywhere because we are going to finish up today with a mailbag. So please, please, please make sure you get those questions, comments, super chats in. Be sure to get those answered right away. But before we get there, make sure that you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel, whatever streaming platform you listen to us on. We'd greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here, subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, to wrap up today's show here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by FanDuel, we have a little daily mailbag. And if this does happen to be your first mailbag, if you want to get your question or comment answered or replied to, you just put MB for mailbag or a little mailbox emoji that lets us know to set it aside and get it answered. And if you want your question bumped up to the top, you can always put in a super chat, which I believe we have a couple of those in there today, Brian.
Yep, we do. We have 3 super chats, and I was not able to star a lot of the questions. We only have 8 starred right now, so it wouldn't hurt if you got a question in right now. The non-super chats, I got one in from PK, Broke Neck Boy, James Mertz, Nick Grosh, and Rocks in the Box. If you did a non-super chat mailbag, I missed it up until now, so go ahead and throw those in there again, and we'll get those done. But we will start off with this super chat here from Jerry Z. Bear.
Thank you for the super chat. Boise is the second winningest team in 2000. They have 3 BCS New Year's 6 wins, a playoff berth, and have not had a losing season since 1997. They have done more than most Power 4 programs in that time. Love IB.
No question. And it's not like their big game wins were over like bad teams. Like, who was it? Arkansas won a Sugar Bowl, I think, and they beat Hawaii. Like, now it's Colt Brennan's Hawaii with June Jones and all that kind of stuff, but like it was still Hawaii. Where, what were the big wins that Boise's had? I mean, you beat Adrian Peterson in Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl. Like that was still to this day one of the greatest wins ever. Beat TCU in the Fiesta Bowl. A pretty darn good football team. So this is a team, Trev, that's been able to have success over the years, and a football team that's capable of sustained success. And you know what I like about them too? They're not a team, Trev, that had like that one great coach. And outside of him, they've just been kind of okay. I mean, Dirk Cutter had a real good career at Boise State. During his time, I'm actually going to go pull up some of their coaches because like it really is impressive and fun to watch. This football team, but like Chris Peterson kind of put him on the map as like a national powerhouse, but he wasn't the only coach that was there. He was there from 1998 to 2000 and, was kind of part of them getting going. He had back-to-back 10-win seasons in the Big West Conference. I don't remember. I think they were still an FCS team at that time. I don't remember. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think that they were, and that got him the Arizona State job. So that was like, did you know that Houston Nutt was their coach for a year as well? 1997, Houston Nutt was their coach. Then Dan Hawkins comes in, and he did a great job at Boise State. He was there for 5 years. He went 8-4, then he went 12-1, 13-1, and 11-1. That was the first coach that really got them kind of like into that respect area, like people worried about Boise State. And, they finished 3 straight years in top 20. And by the way, Dan Hawkins has always been one of my favorite coaches. I just got to be honest, but I'll tell you why in a second. But like they lost to Arkansas in 2002 and then won the rest of their games and then beat Iowa State by 18 in a bowl game. Finished that year 12th. The next year 15th. Next year they finished 16th. They lose at Oregon State by 2. But that year they went on, beat BYU that season, and then beat TCU in a bowl game, or in a bowl game at the end of the year, Fort Worth Bowl. And then the next year they finished 12th in the country. They go 11-1, beat Oregon State, blew out Oregon State in the regular season, beat BYU, and then lost to Louisville in the Liberty Bowl, which I have said on this show before is one of the most entertaining bowl games I've ever watched. It was Boise on Louisville. Do you remember the lefty that Louisville used to have? I think it was Stephen LaFleur's was the quarterback for Louisville. I think Michael Bush was their running back. That was an incredibly entertaining game. Then obviously Dan Hawkins leaves. And he gets the job at Colorado, and his offensive coordinator takes over, guy by the name of Chris Peterson. So, and then he does his thing. And so it wasn't just Chris Peterson put them on the map, kept them on the map, and they've never been the same since then. Chris Peterson wasn't even around when they first started getting good, and then he kind of did the coordinator role, and he was a great offensive coordinator at Boise. Then he takes over as a head coach, and he does a great job. So, but the reason Dan Hawkins is one of my favorite coaches, because he was at Boise when I was just getting started into coaching. And when you're a young coach, you just send, you send your resume out to everybody. I sent my resume to Boise State, and Dan Hawkins sent me a letter, like a handwritten long letter, Brian, and it was just like, look, I don't have anything open, but just this long list of encouragement. Now, I know I didn't have a resume that was unique, that just, this guy's resume caught my heart. That's what he does to people he does not consider for jobs. I was like, that's a guy that gets it. I've always respected him for that. Because and it was, like I said, it was handwritten, and it was personal to me. It was like, you could tell he was responding to my resume. And I've always had respect for guys like that. So I've always rooted for Dan Hawkins, and I was bummed that, it didn't work out for him at Colorado, but he's always got a special place in my heart. But that's just a program overall, Trev, that I really respect. And he did a phenomenal job there, and it just continued under Chris Peterson. And now I'd like to see Spencer Danielson get him back. But he kind of already did. Took him to the playoffs last year. But I want to see them. I don't want that to be the anomaly. I want them to continue doing, being in at least Boise's program goal in today's era. Because I don't know if they can repeat what they did back in the day. Because what happened back in the day is Ian Johnson never makes it to his senior year at Boise, most likely. He probably jumps in the portal and goes somewhere else. I don't know if they can do that, but they should be a team that every year is in the conversation for the best G5 team in the country. And I think they got a shot to be that again today. Or now under Spencer Danielson. But this year's important for that. They've got to keep that rolling. And doesn't mean beating Notre Dame, but it just means don't look against Notre Dame like Arkansas looked against Notre Dame. And then you got to get rolling against New Mexico and UNLV moving forward. So,
Boise State and Miami right now on FanDuel are the only odds-end favorites to win their conference. Everybody else, it's plus odds. Boise State is at minus 140 to win the Mountain West, and Miami right now is at minus 110 to win the ACC. So, Boise State's putting together something special, and it's awesome when it happens to people that you like to support, like a Spencer Danielson or a program like a Boise State. I get that completely. Super chat from Michael S. Thank you, Michael. Carr was good, but he did miss several open end zone fade shots. Needs some work? Well, okay, Michael, I'll say this. I disagree that Carr was good. I thought he was fantastic. He went 22 of 30 for 354 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks in the SEC on the road. Now, I can't tell you the last Notre Dame quarterback that had that type of performance against the SEC, let alone on the road. Yes, there were some missed end zone shots. Thought he juiced up a couple of them. He underthrew some, but I'm sorry, man. If that's your only takeaway from CJ Carr's performance were the missed end zone shots, then I don't know what to tell you.
Not being perfect is not. Does he need work? Yeah, every player on the team still needs work. But those the thing you have to watch the video, Michael S., that we did on the upon further review, because we talked about those throws. We break down those throws and we discuss it. But those are throws he's already shown he can make. So, yeah, look, is CJ Carr 2019 Joe Burrow? No. But no, it's just keep doing what you're doing and getting better every week. So that stuff's going to happen. He also made some brilliant throws in that game.
Another super chat from Michael S. Was the offensive line the primary reason Notre Dame lost to Miami?
No, they were a primary reason, not the primary reason. I mean, they were a big reason, I should say. They were a reason. Turnovers were a reason. You had 2 bad turnovers that led to 10 Miami points. Or no, actually, the first one they had the muff snap, so they ended up getting points on that one. But the second one led to a touchdown. You gave up a touchdown that allowed them to go down and get 7 points in the game. You lost by 3. Last I checked, that was on a screen pass that had nothing to do with the offensive line. They got their butts kicked that game. So did Notre Dame's defense, who couldn't make a stop when it mattered most. So there were a lot of reasons why. Do I think that unit played worse than any other unit on the team? Probably. But they've also gotten better each week. And that's what you want to see. Because now it goes back to what we said earlier about the defense. Right now, the Miami game's the anomaly for this offensive line. Now, some people are still holding on to that game as if like that's defining this offensive line. And I get it because that's by far the best defensive line you faced. So the argument is like, yeah, we don't know how much better the O-line's gotten because they haven't played anybody of that caliber. Okay, that's fair. But there's still ways to evaluate. Are they doing the same things from that game and they're just playing worse teams? Or have they improved in certain things from that game? And it's very clear when you watch the film, they've improved on things since that game. I think they would still have a tough time against the Miami D-line, but I think they'd look much better if they played right now the way that they're playing than they did then. But it's rare that one unit is the only reason or the primary reason that you lost a game. It's rare that that's the case. I'm not saying it's not possible, but like it's rare. They were a reason. So was Chris Ash.
Yeah.
So was a bad CJ Carr turnover. So was, Adon Schuler not playing a ball in the air. I mean, the team lost that game.
Yep. The preparation was horrid. I mean, they were not put in a position to win. I mean, it's not on the offensive line that Malachi Toney went for 6 for 82 and a tutty, unfortunately. And that is a 17-year-old true freshman who has yet to replicate that performance again, and he did it against Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Super chat from Tyler Evans. Thank you for the super chat, Tyler. What did you learn in Week 5 nationally?
That there's really no great teams. I mean, I just really don't know that there's any great team in college football. Ohio State's a very good team. Are they a great team? No. Are they probably the best team in the country right now? Probably. But are they a great team? No. There's a lot of teams still evolving, but there are several teams that have a chance to become that. Ohio State can become great if, their O-line still got to play better. They're still kind of finding their way, the run game. See, Julian Sainz still growing and developing as a quarterback. His numbers against Grambling and Ohio look a whole lot different than his numbers against, Texas and Washington, for example. But you know what he did against Washington? He wasn't great, but you know what he didn't do? Bad turnovers, big mistakes. He managed the game. And they've got to, there's some things they got to improve upon, just like Notre Dame has some things to improve upon. Everybody does. They went on the road and beat a pretty darn good team on the road by 18 that hasn't lost at home since 2021. And it wasn't really, it was a low scoring game, but I never felt watching the game like, hey, I think Washington's about to win this one. Never felt that. Even early on, you could be like, yeah, their line's going to get whooped. But they're kind of the opposite of Notre Dame to me. Their offense is a work in progress. Now it's better than Notre Dame's defense. Their defense is elite. Right now, Notre Dame's defense is elite, but their offense is elite, but their defense is a work in progress. But even then, this is a team that's still developing. Who's the number 2 team in the country right now? Oregon. Yeah. They're a good football team, but they're not as good as they were last year. But they found a way to win. That's the thing is there's no great team, which means there's a good chance we're going to see a lot of upsets still moving forward. That's what that means to me, Trev. And it also means that unless there's some big jumps by certain teams, it's going to be a real fun playoff. It's a little early for that. But we've also seen some teams get exposed this weekend, Trevor. We did. We saw a few teams play teams that are kind of closer to their level and not look like they've been playing a bunch of pansies. I have told you how many times in the first 4 weeks of the season during Penn State's first 3 games of bye that I'm not blown away by what I've seen from Penn State. How many times did I tell you that when we were talking football? And you agreed. And this is what happens when you don't play anybody with a pulse the first 3 games of the year, and then you finally play an Oregon team, and you come back late in the game, but you got outplayed at home at the beginning of the game and the end of the game and lost that football game.
Again.
Yeah. That's kind of who you are. So, that was one of my big takeaways is there's just no great teams, which is, in my opinion, going to make for a real fun year. As a Notre Dame fan, that's a good thing too, because that means there's more chances that we're going to see a lot more 2-loss teams this year than maybe we thought we were a week ago.
Yeah. I mean, Tyler, big picture nationally, takeaways, really outside of the Big Ten, every conference is wide open. I mean,
outside of the Big Ten?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Oregon, Ohio State. That's going to be the Big Ten championship. I couldn't tell you who's going to be in the SEC championship. There's probably 4 or 5 teams legitimately in contention for that right now. ACC couldn't tell you. Big 12 couldn't tell you. But the Big Ten, it'll be Ohio State and Oregon. And I would be astonished if it wasn't.
Could be. It's the favorites. It's kind of the debate we had last year. I think Indiana is legitimately a really good football team. I think their schedule is going to keep them out because they have to go to Oregon next. But I think Indiana is a legitimately good football team. They have to go to Indiana, to Penn State. I think they can beat Penn State. I'm not saying they will. I'm saying they can. So I think there's 3 teams in the Big Ten that are better than everybody else. I agree with you that it will be Ohio State and Oregon. I think they're the top 2 right now, but I think Indiana is very close. A lot closer than maybe some folks want to admit. But look, you don't beat Indiana or Illinois by 50 by accident. And they went on the road and beat Iowa at Iowa in a game where they didn't play very well. And that's the mark of a good team for me, is one that can not play their A game on the road against a team like Iowa and still win. And their defense this year is really good. And that Old Dominion win is looking a whole lot better right now, Trev. Because you talk about I remember watching that, or watching some of that game, and you're like, man, they beat Old Dominion 20-14. Well, now you look at it, Old Dominion's 3-1, and they have wins over Virginia Tech and Liberty. Double-digit wins over Virginia Tech and Liberty. Maybe Old Dominion's pretty good.
Yeah.
So my sister's alma mater is kind of out there balling, but some teams that people wrote off in week 1 are looking pretty darn good now. Notre Dame, Alabama might have been the 2 best looking teams this weekend outside of maybe, along with Oregon. They were darn good looking football teams right now. That's why we shouldn't overreact to early season games. Just some of the takeaways for me, Trev. There's a lot of teams, that have a chance to be conference contenders in ACC, SEC, Big 12, Mountain West, AAC. I think we're in for a very, very fun and entertaining season.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Shoot, man, we talked about that before the season started. We thought that this was going to be a crazy year of college football. I'm happy that it's coming to fruition. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Trev, I want to get your thoughts. Can we just have this conversation now, since we don't really do a show about this?
Yeah.
What did you think of the Georgia-Alabama game?
I thought Alabama bounced back really well. I am still, I don't want to use the word holding out, because it sounds like I'm rooting for Georgia to be good, which I'm not. I don't, no pun intended, I don't have a dog in that fight. But this is kind of just who Kirby Smart is. He just can't beat Alabama. So I don't know what that win was more of. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's he just can't, there's that one program that you just can't get over, because even last year we know what Alabama turned out to be. I don't think that they're going to do that this year. Alabama really impressed me the way that they bounced back, truthfully.
Yeah. And they're still not playing their best football.
No. But I've seen some people take the other extreme with Georgia. It's Georgia's done in the SEC. This isn't their conference to win anymore. And it's they lost to Alabama.
They have one loss.
Year. Yeah.
They have one loss.
Now, Do I think they look like world beaters? I don't, because similar to the Penn State conversation, we saw a little bit of this writing on the wall, against Marshall and Austin Peay. It was like you didn't do to those teams kind of what you should have. Yeah. You won a shootout against Tennessee and Knoxville, which was an impressive win. But my takeaway from it is I think Georgia's still very much in the hunt.
But is that really a whole lot different than what they were last year? I mean, do we not forget this team last year in week 3 barely beat Kentucky, who was terrible? Fell behind Alabama 28-0. They were a whole lot more competitive against Alabama this year than they were last year.
Oh, yeah.
So just there. I think Alabama's a team that what impressed me is Alabama still has not played their best football or anything close to it. Drop passes, mistakes on defense. I think that Georgia has legitimate offensive concerns. And the thing that happens this time of the year, when I look at these teams, you say, okay, games that we thought meant something in weeks 1 and 2 maybe don't mean as much now. So when you think about LSU's win over Clemson, that game doesn't mean a whole lot to me now. I mean, I just okay, whatever. You barely beat Clemson. I watched Syracuse and Georgia Tech beat them more convincingly than you did. Like they're 1-3 now. Indiana's sloppy win over Old Dominion. That at the time I was like, maybe Indiana's not as good as we thought. Now you look and you're like, dude, that's a pretty good win. That was a pretty good season opening G5 win. I think you're starting to see some of the games that maybe thought were good or bad wins or losses are looking better or looking worse. Like the point production. The point is like Georgia points against the points that they scored against Tennessee's defense. You're like, man, Georgia's offense is legit. Well, then you kind of start to realize, maybe Tennessee's defense is a hot mess this year. Maybe they're not a very good defense. They gave up a bunch of points there. They gave up 24 points to UAB. Then just gave up 34 points to Mississippi State, gave up 26 to Syracuse. Maybe their defense isn't that good. And that's what helped Georgia. But Georgia is to Tennessee, to your point, though, what Alabama is to Georgia. You'll beat them occasionally, but you're not going to do it consistently. You just got to find ways to win. And honestly, I just think that Georgia is a team that I said before the season, I'm not in love with their skill talent on offense. Now, I think their running back room is better than I thought it was going to be. Chancey Bowens is a horse with Nate Frazier. Like that's going to be a real good. And then what's the name of the other kid that was running on Alabama? I forget the other kid's name. But that's a good backfield. Their line is much more physical this year. They looked more like what Georgia needs to be to win. And they're going to get better and better and better, and Gunner's going to make some of those plays. They started true freshman offensive linemen against Alabama. Those guys are going to get better and better and better and better and better every week. And so those things are all things that I want to see kind of play out. We're just now starting to learn about some of these teams. And a team that impressed me again this weekend, that's impressed me all year, Virginia. Tony Elliott's doing a great job with that team. We talked about this on Thursday. I won't say that I predicted Virginia to win. I didn't. I just said I got my eye on this game because I think Virginia can play with them, and then they ended up doing it. So, Trev, I just think this is going to be a blast of a year.
Yep, agreed completely. And I am along for the ride. I'm excited. Super chat from Connor Patton. Thank you for the super chat, Connor. Sorry if this was covered. What should we be rooting for in order to get to the playoffs?
Honestly, right now, Connor, and I don't mean this to be flippant or disrespectful in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Right now, they're 2-2. What should we be rooting for to get in the play? Right now, the only focus that I have right now is Notre Dame to keep getting better every week.
Yep.
It's not coach speak because I'm going to give you a follow-up answer here in a second. But Notre Dame still has to prove to me that they are a dominant team. And not just, win. Everybody just win. If Notre Dame goes through the next 8 games and they just kind of barely squeak by with a bunch of 24-21 wins, they're not going to get in the playoffs most likely. They have to have a lot of dominant wins. And if they can have a lot of dominant wins, then they're going to be fine. People say, well, they're like Miami last year. No, they're not. Because last year Miami had no good wins, but they also had they had bad losses. You lost to Syracuse and Georgia Tech, 2 unranked teams. This year, Notre Dame's losses are going to look way better than what Miami's did. And Miami, I don't think it's fair, but it's reality. You lose your last 2 and you lose your first 2, and you have the same resume in between. The team that lost the first 2 is going to get in over the team that lost the last 2. Same exact resume. That's just the reality of it. It's not fair.
Well,
it's the reality of it.
It's also timing of the losses too.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, both.
That's what I was saying. Like if 2 teams have the same schedule, but one team lost their first 2 games, and the other team lost their last 2 games, then the team that lost their last 2 games is not getting in over the team that lost their first 2 games. That's the timing part of it. And so it's really just about winning. Now, beyond that, there's no specifics that I look at, Connor. Like you need this team to lose, and there's way too many teams ahead of Notre Dame right now. What you just need in general is chaos. Just upsets every week. Last week was perfect for Notre Dame, if you look at it, not just because of what Notre Dame did, but if you look at just overall the results from the weekend, Trevor, I mean, what was it, like 4 top 10 teams got beat? Or was it 3? So you had number 8 got beat. You had number 3 got beat. Number 4 got beat. Number 5 got beat. Like, that's kind of where you want to be. You need to keep seeing games like that happen. And I don't care so much about, Notre Dame's schedule and you needed you. I don't really care about the schedule. You go blow teams out, you're going to be in. But just overall chaos. Because if Notre Dame's in a battle with a bunch of other 2-loss teams, they're going to get in. The only question then is, where are they going to be ranked? If it's a 2-loss Notre Dame against a 1-loss, P4 team, then for that final spot, then we could be getting a little bit like, I don't know. So that's really the big thing for me. It's just
chaos for sure. I mean, when I look at this big picture, Connor, and I can't give you specific examples of teams, but kind of moving on, you kind of need the higher seeded teams to beat the lower seeded teams, because if the lower seeded teams keep beating the higher seeded teams, that kind of just keeps Notre Dame around the 20th. That's just kind of simple, I guess, like simple math, I guess you could call it. Like we saw that with Ole Miss and LSU this past weekend. Now LSU could continue to lose more, and that's very possible, especially considering what that offense looks like right now. But when the 13th team in the country beats the number 4 team in the country, they're not going to drop the number 4 team in the country behind Notre Dame. Whereas if the number 4 team in the country beats the number 13 team in the country, you have a better shot at that. That's just kind of some of the stuff moving forward.
But those games happening are still good, because now that number 3 team loses another one, that's maybe when Notre Dame leaps them down the road.
Yeah.
And that's why those teams stacking up losses are good, because like LSU lost to a team that was ranked 13th, but they're not ranked 13th anymore. So it's going to look good. But now when they get their second loss, and Notre Dame's creeped up to 13, now that's when Notre Dame jumps them. And that's why right now it's just about win and look good doing it, and then just root for chaos. Just be an underdog watcher all season. That's really a big part of it, except when it's Miami and A&M, because you want those teams to be locks to get into the playoff. Or you either need Miami and A&M to be really good or really bad the rest of the way. What I mean by that is, Trevor, you don't want A&M being 10-2 and Miami being 10-2 and Notre Dame being 10-2, and they're all fighting for 2 spots, because you're not getting it, potentially.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think it's a given that they won't get it. Like if Miami loses a game late and they lose a second game late and it's a bad loss to somebody that Notre Dame played and blown, they're going to say, well, look, I was all the way back in week 1. This is a different Notre Dame team now. But you just don't want to put the committee in that position where the head-to-head kind of matters. So you either want Miami to be like 9-3, 8-4, A&M to be 9-3, 8-4, or you want them to be playoff teams, because if they're playoff teams, that means they knocked out other teams. If Miami's a lock for the playoffs, that means they most likely gave Florida State their second loss of the year. Now Notre Dame's ahead of Florida State. You know what I mean, Trevor? Like, that's where I'm at with that, is like, if A&M is a lock for the playoff, they're in the SEC title game. That means they gave, Texas a loss. That means they've handed some losses to some teams that Notre Dame might be going against. So it's chaos one way or the other. Either those teams win a bunch or those teams lose a bunch. I think those things help. But it really still right now at 2-2, you're just keep winning and looking good doing so. That's the key.
100%. Super chat from Tyler Evans. Thank you, Tyler. With Pittman out, is there any more coaches you believe will also be out before season's end?
Oh, boy. I can't tell you who, but they're not going to be the last coaches that are fired. Billy Napier is going to have a hard time making it. But some of them, Trev, it's just what's their buyout going to look like? That's the thing that factors in all this. What were you going to say? Who are some names you're going to say?
Luke Fickell. I mean, man, they have not looked good through the first part of the season, and now they're getting into the bulk of their schedule. They're on the road against Michigan, home against Iowa, home against Ohio State, at Oregon. Then they have a bye. Then they finish with Washington, at IU, home against Illinois, at Minnesota. I mean, if they get blown out and don't do well in October,
you mean like a 17-point home loss to Maryland?
Yeah.
Oh wait, that already happened.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So.
Yeah.
That
was not good.
Yeah,
that was not good.
I would be, because I don't know what his buyout is, but if it's a somewhat reasonable buyout, I would be shocked if Luke Fickell is still the head coach at Wisconsin by November.
I think your point is spot on, Trevor. They have not even gotten to the tough part of their schedule yet. I mean, you expect them to be 3-1 right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're only one game off that, so it's not like terrible. But they're one game off that because they got blown out at home by Maryland. And beat Miami of Ohio 10-0, 17-0. Like, that's not great. And Alabama embarrassed them.
And I think that game was like 3-0 at halftime.
It was 3-0 for most of the game. Here, let me look up that score, because let's go that was week 1, right, Trev? Let's go Big Ten. Because I remember us joking, like people were talking about, it was 10-0 going into the fourth quarter. Wisconsin scored their last touchdown in the fourth quarter with 6:45 left in the game. It was a 3-play, 2-yard drive. So it was a turnover. Well, they lost their starting quarterback. I'm sorry. It's Miami of Ohio. Losing your starting quarterback should not debilitate your offense. So it ain't good. It ain't good. But the point is, like you said, I don't know their buyout. Neither do I. So how can I possibly know? Billy Napier, unless the buyout just makes it impossible, he's in a similar boat, Trev, that Luke Fickell is, in that they're a very disappointing 2-2 right now, or 1-3 right now. I'm sorry. And they haven't even gotten to the full heart of their schedule. They still have Texas at home, at Texas A&M, Mississippi State at home, who can beat them, Georgia, at Kentucky, at Ole Miss, and then home against Tennessee and Florida State. And they're already 1-3.
I just looked it up. Luke Fickell's buyout is going to be roughly $31.5 million. I did not know that he signed a 7-year contract in November of 2022.
That was done by Wisconsin. But see, that's kind of what you're talking about, though, Trev, and it makes it harder when you've got to now pay, $21 million to student athletes that you're going to be there.
Yeah.
Dabo's not going to get fired, nor should he get fired.
No.
Now, could Dabo retire? Yeah, Dabo's not getting fired by Clemson, nor should he. They're a playoff team last year. They won the ACC last year. This is an incredibly disappointing season. Andrew Gilmore had a good one. Hugh Freeze is in trouble. He's in trouble. He could be one, because Auburn can raise the money to get rid of him. They will raise the money to get rid of him. He is one. I would put Hugh Freeze in that conversation. Let's go through the standings. Just nobody in the AAC. It's too early for that.
It won't be by the end of the year, but I think going into next season, Matt Rule's seat, barring a turnaround, is going to be red hot.
Yep. The loss to Michigan was very disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
They have got to, now, but the thing is, they got to play at Maryland next weekend. Or no, they play Michigan State this weekend, have to win that one. And that won't be easy. They have to beat Maryland on the road the following week. Like they're because they still have at Minnesota, they still have USC at home, they still have at Penn State, and they still have Iowa at home. There's more losable games on there. And I don't think they're super happy about that. I think Northwestern's coach, Sean Davis, and I talked about this. They're 2-2 and just got an ugly win over UCLA. That's one prediction I got right. I said it was going to set back offensive football a decade, and it pretty much did. Not nearly as bad as the Northern Illinois San Diego State game, but it did. But I don't see that. When people talk about Bill Belichick, I don't think they fire him during the season. I could see him stepping away at the end of the season, but it is a joke. Like, that is just the whole situation is just weird. But another coach, Trev, I'm very curious what the buyout is for Mark Stoops at Kentucky. That's another one that I'm like, that program has fallen on some very hard times. And getting beat by South Carolina is not bad. You got whooped pretty good by them. And now they've got to play at Georgia this weekend. They've still got Texas, Tennessee, at Auburn, Florida, at Vandy, at Louisville. And there's some people that I don't think have forgiven him for flirting with the Texas A&M job.
No,
Texas A&M screwed him over a little bit with how that went down.
Sorry, I forgot to bring this up. I was looking at it and I wanted to fact check myself to make sure it's correct. Nebraska hasn't beat a ranked team since 2016.
I saw that a couple weeks ago when they were getting ready to play. Was it Michigan? So I saw somebody say that. That's crazy.
Oh, that is wild. And it was number 22 Oregon back in 2016.
That's crazy.
35-32.
Was it a bowl game?
No, it was just in the regular season. It was in September. They beat Oregon at home when they were 22nd in the country, and they won 35-32. And then they played 3 other ranked teams that season. They lost to Wisconsin 23-17 in overtime. They lost to number 6 Ohio State 62-3, and then they lost to a ranked Tennessee team in the Music City Bowl 38-24.
Real quick, while we're talking about Nebraska, Raymond Harton had this question: thoughts on Dylan Raiola at Nebraska after 4 games?
I think he's efficient. Like he doesn't put the ball in harm's way too much. He has a lot of passing attempts on the season, and a lot of it has been because his passing game is very reminiscent of what he did against Cincinnati in Week 1. It's it's either dump offs or a shot downfield. Mm-hmm. But they can't attack maybe not can't is not the right word, but they struggle to attack kind of like that 10-19 range. But I mean, he himself has done a relatively good job of taking care of the football. So
he's good. He's not great. I mean, he went 30 of 41 for 308 yards and 3 touchdowns and a pick against Michigan. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. They ran the ball for 43 yards and 31 attempts. Now he got minus 49 yards. I don't think his pocket presence is great. I still don't think it's great. I don't think he has the overall feel for the game that he needs to, and I don't think he's super accurate. Those have been my knocks on him since high school. But he's also only a sophomore. I mean, I know he's played a lot of football. He's still a true sophomore at quarterback, and I don't think he's but I also feel like, Trev, they're wasting talent there on offense. Like, they're not throwing the ball with any kind of, to your point, it's almost to the point where he doesn't want to make a mistake. So he won't take some of the shots that someone with his arm should be taking. And that's if he wants to emulate Pat Mahomes, he needs to maybe emulate some of the throws that he's willing to make that this young man is not willing to make. So, and somebody said he has no elite weapons. He should. It's the Big Ten. He doesn't need elite weapons. The reality of it, Trevor, is there's plenty of good weapons in Nebraska. They don't need elite weapons. Like Dane Key's a good football player. And Isaiah Hunter's a good football player. Isaiah Mosey's a good football player out of the backfield. Emmett Johnson's a good football player out of the backfield. Ja'Cory Barney's a good football player. Like, they've got good weapons. Do they have a Malachi Fields? No. But they've got good football players there. That's not an excuse. That's not.
No, you can't judge a quarterback's performance because he doesn't have Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate.
Right.
That's just not. No.
Agree. I agree with that. Good question, Raymond. Let's get back to the top to PK.
It appears that Jeremiah Love is spinning quite a bit more as he runs this year. I wonder if the lack of constant eyes ahead and exposing his back to hits is an increased injury risk.
Kid can't win. It's like if he puts his head down and runs over somebody, he doesn't even make that kind of contact. If he leaps over, why is he always jumping? Then he spins away. It's like, guys, football, every time you carry the football, there's a risk of injury. As a running back, your job is to do what you can do to make guys miss. Honestly, PK. So, no, I don't have a problem with it. He's doing that because in those instances, that's what's called for. Like the touchdown pass and the touchdown run that he had against Arkansas, those spins that's the only move he can make. It was smart. So I have no problem with it. I mean, when I have an issue, it's like with leaping. Jumping over people. I don't have a problem with jumping over people. I have a problem when you're just it's your go-to move. It's an appropriate sometimes, it's appropriate other times. Spinning. Where like PK, here's where I'd be concerned, PK, is if he was running inside zone and cuts into the backside hole, spins into the backside hole, and gets ear-holed by someone. That's not the time and place to spin. I think his spins have been appropriately timed and necessary and in space or behind the line in an appropriate manner. I think that's what he needs to do. I have no problem with that. It's just, I think it's needed. I think it's a good tool in his arsenal because now if you're against him in space, he can run over you, he can spin around you, he can leap over you. Now teams are going to be less likely to go in there 100 miles an hour against him because he now has all these tools in his tool shed. And I think this makes him more effective. But anytime you're a back, there's a chance to get punished. And the spin move is somebody said spin moves created glancing blow. It's not the hit the guy you're spinning off of that concerns me on a spin move. It's the guy you're spinning into. That's the one that can get you. Hardest hit I ever took in college. The only in-game concussion I remember getting in college. I got a couple in high school, but I was running. I had scrambled right, and I made a guy miss, just juked him, and he goes flying by, and I'm thinking, Trev, dude, I'm looking ahead, and there's nothing but grass, and I'm like, I'm out the gate. I didn't know that a linebacker was coming behind me. As soon as I made that move and made that guy miss, I get lifted up and wham, planted on the ground. So it wasn't a guy that I made miss that hurt me. It was the guy that came up behind me that I didn't see. That's the same thing with a spin move that you get concerned about. It's, I spin off this guy. But that's why you spin in space more so than spin in the line, because, in that situation against the blitz, it's that I got to beat that guy and do whatever you got to do to make him miss. And that's going to be the key.
From Broke Neck Boy, Stanford live show this year. God bless you all.
I think we said we were going to do that, right, Trev? Didn't I say in a show that we're going to do that this year? Is we're going to have a live show during the Stanford game. I think that's the plan right now. We did that a couple years ago. It's a lot of fun. You haven't done one of those yet. We didn't do one last year, right, Trev? So we basically go live during the game. Now, Trev won't be able to be there because Trev will be at the Stanford game. He's going to be covering the game. But you're like, man, I don't know if I want to cover the game. But
I'm actually, dude, got a tickle in the throat.
Yeah,
I don't know if
already.
I don't know if travel's the right thing for me, bro.
Thanksgiving, yeah. But we did that a couple years ago. I think it was me, Vince, and Ryan, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun to do. So I think the plan right now is to do it because people seem to like it, but we'll see. Maybe rotate people during the game or something like that. We'll see.
James Mertz, how surprised were you on Lincoln Riley setting up the time zone excuse to follow it up with a loss? Slight. pettiness.
Oh no, this. Trev, you and I were talking about this. Let's just have at it. Trev and I were both going off on this on the phone. Here's the thing. If you didn't want to have an 11 a.m. Central Time kickoff, 9 o'clock Pacific Coast Time kickoff, there's something really easy you could have done. Do you know what that is, Trev?
Enlighten me.
You could have stayed in the Pac-12 against other teams that are on Mountain and West Coast time. Do you know how many 9 a.m. kickoffs they had when they're in the Pac-12? Like zero. It so annoys me when these teams from the Pac-12 cry about having to play certain kickoff times in a league 2-3 time zones over. You made the choice. You chose to join the Big Ten. Did you think you wanted to join the Big Ten and get special kickoff times? If you want to be more determined of when you play games, here's a thought. Go independent. And then you can decide all the times of your home games like Notre Dame does. Right? I mean, do you think Notre Dame wanted to have an 11 a.m. kickoff in Arkansas? No. Did you hear Marcus Freeman complain? He's like, that they knew how hot it was going to be in Arkansas at 11 o'clock in the morning and noon on a Saturday afternoon in September. Did you ever Marcus Freeman could cry about it one time? No. So literally Lane Kiffin kicked off at the same, but we had a 10:30 kickoff the week before. Not Pacific Coast time.
That's my biggest gripe with it is you can't play the time zone game in your favor. It's like we went from the latest possible kickoff at 11 to kicking off at 9 a.m. It's like, okay, well then which one is it? Are you going off of Eastern time or are you going off of Pacific time? Because if you're going off of Eastern time, you kicked off at noon, buddy.
Right.
Like, come on. Right. I think that's Bush League.
And it wasn't the next day. This isn't like a day, like you Major League Baseball, Saturday night, you have a game at 7:30 that goes to 15 innings, and then the next morning you've got a noon noon start time. Like you get a week off. Like, stop crying. Like, but that's who he is. Like, that's who Lincoln Riley is. He's a crybaby. Like, he's a crybaby. And it's like James Franklin last year. We have a long enough runway. Well, maybe you guys should have thought about that before you let two teams from LA, a team from Seattle, and a team from, Oregon into your league. Maybe you should have thought about that. So that's what bothers me. When you make a choice and then that choice gets you in trouble. I can't believe this cop arrested me. What'd you do? I only stole a few things, but he had no business. Well, dude, you know what? You know why I've never been arrested, Trevor? Because I don't steal crap. I don't break I don't, do harm. I mean, I speed, but got pulled over a few times. Don't break the law. Don't want to. If you don't want 11 a.m., 9 a.m. West Coast time kickoffs, don't join a freaking league where over half the teams are in the Eastern time zone. Like, stop crying about it. But that's why his team lost. Like, you put that in their head. You put that in their head that they're being disadvantaged. I think as you said this to me, like, I want a coach that's going to look at that and say, this is why we're better. This is why we're going to win. Because nobody has to go through the stuff that we have to go through. Nobody has to travel like us. Nobody has to go from a 10:30 kickoff to a 9 a.m. kickoff. Now, you can use when you're talking to your players, use it to your advantage. This is why we're tougher. This is why we're better. This is why we're going to go out there and run this thing this year. But as soon as you start with that crybaby stuff, now that's into your players' heads. This isn't fair. It's not right. Blah, 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 blah. And now this is where you are. You go lose to an Illinois team who got beat by 50 last week by Indiana. Like, this is on you. This is why you've never won the big ones, because you're too soft. And your team will always be a reflection of the head coach. That's my take on that. He's soft.
I think that's spot on. I'm going to start manipulating time zones for my favor, Brian.
Okay.
I am. I was born in South Korea. It's 5:03 in the morning right now.
Right.
When Lauren gets home, I'm like, man, Brian's got me doing shows at 5 a.m.
Yeah. Started at night. Now I'm doing them in the morning.
Jeez.
Trev shows up late for a show. Well, you said it was at 1 p.m. Yeah. Well, I thought we were talking Central. Trev, we're both in the Eastern time zone. Yeah, but you didn't specify.
Yeah, but Sean Davis is on Central time. So didn't know.
I didn't know if we were going on Sean's time or your time.
Like, come
yeah,
on,
it's just,
man.
it's just, he's soft, man. He is, man. He really is.
Super chat from Patrick Duffy. Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate the super chat. Fun stat. Tomorrow is October 1st. Notre Dame hasn't punted since September 13th.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Patrick.
Man.
Yeah. John Emerson with a super chat. And then John also says, are y'all going to meet up anywhere for the Boise State game? As of right now, John, we don't have anything planned for the Boise State game. We may do something like we did for the A&M game where Trev and I kind of find a place in between the stadium and the library, just in the grass to hang out. We may do something like that to be determined. We'll let you know on this show if we are. However, we are having 2 tailgates in a row starting the next week. We are going to have a tailgate for the NC State game. And then we are also going to have a tailgate. So we'll kind of get there in the morning. My mom's going to take care of that. My parents are going to be there and do all the food. Then the next week for the USC game, we're also having a tailgate. That'll be more of the all-day thing. We'll try to get there around like noon or 1 and just be there all day. So we will definitely be doing something for NC State and USC. But not sure of that. But we'll let you know, John, as we get closer to the game, kind of what our plans are.
One of my cousins is tailgating for the game. I'm going to stop by and see him. So, John, if you see me walking around, flag me down. Love to meet you in person, man. Nicholas Grosh. What must Bryce Young do to become dominant, and what would that look like?
It's consistency in improving his hand play. I mean, those are areas where Bryce has got to be more consistent with his get off. He's still not always consistent with it's just little things. Are you taking on a block properly? You think of the play where he got logged inside against A&M that opened up a big run. He was playing hard. He just wasn't playing with sound technique. He wasn't 100% correct with his assignment and the angle in which you do it. There was a play that Anthony Knapp missed on Saturday. Came off hard, went to down block, but he was too level, and the guys went right outside of him. Like, the effort's there, but the technical prowess wasn't there. This is why I told you guys in the offseason that I this wasn't my year for predicting Bryce Young's breakout. I think it'll be next year.
Yeah.
Because I still think we're going to see some up and downness from Bryce because he's still young, he's still pretty raw. But what does it look like when he becomes dominant, an absolute monster against the run, and a pretty darn good pass rusher? I think he'd be a great run defender first and then a pass rusher second, but that's what he's capable of. A guy that has 13 tackles for loss and 9 sacks, something like that next year. And then if he comes back for senior years, like a 15 and 10 guy, something like that. A Stephon Tuitt type of guy is what I think Bryce can be. He just needs time. That's all. And he was better. I thought he played better against Arkansas than he really had all year from an effort and just physicality standpoint. I thought he was very good.
Yep. I think mentally for Bryce Young, he just has to understand that he just can't be Abdul Carter on every single snap.
Right.
Like, not at this stage in your career. Not saying that he doesn't have the talent to be, not saying that he's never going to be as good as. I'm just saying, sometimes when you watch him play, it looks like he's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. And sometimes like, hey, simplify it for yourself, do your job on this play, and then the results will come. Because on the plays that he does just simplify it and does his job, he's very, very productive.
Yep.
Rocks in the box. Do you guys have a favorite CJ Carr play or pass yet?
Yeah, I'd say my favorite one is I have 2, really. It's the touchdown pass against Purdue, the first one, just like letting everybody know we will throw it over your head. But the second one is probably the pass play to Malachi Fields against Miami, the back shoulder one, because look, you kind of knew then that this kid is going to be able to make some throws that just like nobody else has been able to even try at Notre Dame in recent years. And I think those 2 throws are the ones that kind of tell the other teams. I mean, you could actually argue the one he threw a week later against A&M might have been even better, the back shoulder to Malachi then. But I think those are the throws that kind of tell us like, hey, this kid's got a lot of stones, but he also has tremendous ball placement and arm talent. And I think those are probably the two ones for me just because of what not that they were the two best throws, but just the two that meant something about what this offense is going to look like moving forward.
Yeah, I have two. It's either the one against Purdue, the over-the-top post route to Fields, because that put a lot of the, he's smart, but can he actually throw it downfield? Like, how's his arm strength? I think that put that conversation to rest. Dude, his no-look pass against Miami was sick. I mean, I haven't seen a quarterback at Notre Dame play with that much swag since Jimmy Clausen, and I'm serious.
He did that in his first game.
And he did that. That was his first career touchdown pass. Here's all I'm saying. If Arch Manning's first career touchdown pass was a no-look pass in a top 10 game on the road,
they'd still be showing that on
100%.
On ESPN, yeah.
100%. But, I mean, that showed me it's like, all right, yeah, Notre Dame's got a dude back there. Because, look, I understand – Gilbert was wide open and yada, yada, yada. But to be able to look off the backside defender the way that he did, throw it, no look, that's just sweet. Jason Smith, the penalty on Gerby Lambert being ineligible downfield looked to be a setup for a screen. If that pass doesn't go past the line of scrimmage, is that not a penalty? If he throws at the feet of the running back behind, is that still a penalty?
Was that the play on the offsetting penalties?
I'm not sure.
Is that the one that Gerby got called? I think that's the only one that I remember them calling an ineligible person downfield, right? Was that the only one? I know they had that. I know they had the illegal block by Faison. They had the illegal block by Pauling. Don't know of any other. I think that's the one. It did go past the line, though. The ball got thrown past the line.
Well, because it looked like it was a middle tunnel screen set up to Jordan Faison. It wasn't to the running back in the backfield.
Right. It was a Jordan got too far down the field and CJ overthrew Jordan also because he was getting pressured. So even if Jordan was behind the line, if CJ throws the ball 3 feet over his head and it goes down and hits an offensive lineman, that's still going to get called. You can't engage the pass past the line. So that's why I thought it was the proper call. It was a proper call. And actually, I think it kind of worked out well for Notre Dame because I thought that 3rd and 7 call might have been Mike Denbrock's best play call of the game. Of all the, and what I mean play call, I mean in the moment play call.
Another one from Rocks in the Box. How wide open is the SEC? It reminds me of last year and the way the SEC just ate each other alive, and the last man standing was Georgia.
I think that's fair. I don't know if Box in the Rocks is new. Or if it's someone that we've known, but they've changed their name. But two good comments so far. But Trev, you said this earlier. Like, I have no clue who's going to win the SEC.
Nope. You could tell me that it's 4 to 5 different teams, and I'd believe you. Yeah. I mean,
there's 7 teams that haven't lost a game yet in the SEC. Now, one team hasn't even played an SEC game yet. That's Texas. Ole Miss is already 3-0. And then Missouri, Vandy, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Alabama are all undefeated, and Texas is undefeated, but they're also unwinned. And then you've got Georgia with 1 loss, LSU with 1 loss, Tennessee with 1 loss. Florida, as bad as they are, they've only got 1 conference loss. That they right the ship, they can still compete for the title, like Clemson, kind of like Clemson did last year. But in the ACC, I should say. But, then you've got, Oklahoma looks great, but then John Mateer's out. How long is he going to be out? That he has been their offense, basically. So I think it's wide open. And, I mean, Ole Miss is in pole position now, but I've been blown away with Ole Miss so far. I think Notre Dame would smash Ole Miss. Remember last year, we're like, God, that's the one team in the playoffs I didn't want to play. Because if the good version of Ole Miss showed up, they could beat anybody last year. I mean, they had the talent on both sides of the ball to beat anybody on any given Saturday or in the playoffs Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. The playoffs were last year. Any given Wednesday in the playoffs, But you just never knew what you were going to get. And then one week they lose at home to Kentucky. You just never knew what version of Ole Miss you're going to get. But when they were playing good, boy, you couldn't cover their receivers. You couldn't stop their quarterback. You couldn't do anything on their D-line. This team is probably coached better, but they're not as talented as last year's team. They're talented, don't get me wrong, but they're just not as talented. LSU is going to lose at least 2 more games. Can I tell you? So I had, after LSU lost, I didn't even think twice about going into any of the chats like I used to talk trash LSU fans because I'm like, dude, Notre Dame's 2-2. I'm not running my mouth. We beat an SEC team. Yeah, also lost to one 2 weeks ago. I'm not in trash talk LSU fans mode. But it was hilarious watching people that used to give me so much crap about what I said about Brian Kelly talking about what's his buyout after the Ole Miss loss. I thought that was freaking hilarious. I try to tell y'all, and what are they complaining about? Can't ever put it all together. Why is Garrett Nussmeier regressing? Guys, I told you on your own show like 4 years ago that quarterbacks regress under Brian Kelly. What's the one exception? The offense run by Mike Denbrock. But Brian Kelly kind of chased Mike Denbrock out of LSU to a degree to Notre Dame, and now all of a sudden Notre Dame's offense is cooking with a redshirt freshman and Garrett Nussmeier can ball. The best part is there was some guy on, I think it was on Twitter, that made a comment about so Boxing the Rocks is Tristan Shout, by the way. I just realized he just said that in the chat. There was a guy that made a comment like, when I put my comment about what LSU was doing with Mike Denbrock and what they're doing without, and then what Notre Dame's doing with Mike Denbrock and what they did before. And he's like, well, yeah, I mean, Mike Denbrock was aided by Jaden Daniels and the person and Nussmeier. I just pretty much just kind of like, dude, you're banned. Like, this is such a useless comment. But I wanted to be like, hold on a second. Don't they still have Garrett Nussmeier? And what are they doing now? It's just some people just like, do you not even hear what you say? Like, it's like that scene from National Security. Like, do you even believe the things that you say? Well, I don't really know. I don't know what I be saying till I be done saying it. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I think some of you are. It's hilarious, man. But this is a BK problem. This isn't a Joe Sloan problem. 2 years ago, every LSU fan in the country was telling me how they were better off without Mike Denbrock because they had Joe Sloan, who was the real brains behind the offense with Jaden Daniels. Okay, sure.
Yeah, you mean the same way that Penn State was better off without Jaywan Sider? Now looking at what their running backs are doing?
Right.
Sorry, I know that was a stray, but
yeah.
I figured they were kind of in the same conversation.
It's all good. I mean, did like Joe Sloan have a lobotomy in the offseason, and that's why he's all of a sudden they can't score? I mean, like, what you know what I mean? Like, I thought he was the brains behind it. But that was fun to see that, man. That was really fun to see that. To see all the hate. And then all these Penn State fans have been running their mouth about Notre Dame losing to two good teams, and then all of a sudden the first team with a pulse they play, they get beat by, which I thought was hilarious. By the way, everybody's blaming Drew Aller. That was a terrible play call. Yeah, by Andy Kotelnicki. So the reason I hated that is because Drew Aller never saw Dylan Thieneman coming. Go back and watch the play. He brings Thieneman into the play with the motion of the receiver. Why are you running a post wheel into the boundary and then bringing a receiver as the third option into that play? All you're doing is bringing an extra defender into the short side of the field. That was a terrible play design. Notre Dame ran the same play, and it worked great into the boundary, but they didn't bring the third guy over. So that was a dumb play call. Now, and Drew just never saw the guy. Now, a senior quarterback's got to have more field awareness than that, but that's one of those ones where you kind of got to be like, dude, why did you make that call then? Like, that was a bad call. But he's just not that guy. But but there's a lot of teams that are just now starting to play good teams, Trev, and we're starting to learn more about them. Has Texas played anybody since the Ohio State game?
No, they played San Jose State, UTEP, and Sam Houston.
So we still have a lot to learn about a lot of teams, including Notre Dame.
Yep.
But this will not be their only loss of the season. And their next loss likely won't be their only loss, their second loss, the only additional loss of the season. That team, that's who they are. They are not a good offense. They've been like, if you would have given Brian Kelly in 2023 this defense, they beat Michigan in the title game. My opinion. Are you kidding me? But that's who Brian Kelly is. Just like if you'd give the 2015 offense the 2018 defense, that team wins a title. Like, give the 2015 Notre Dame offense the 2012 Notre Dame defense, and they win a title that year. That's who Brian Kelly's always been. If. But there's one problem that always persists. and it's him. He's the common denominator. And I just laughed when he was throwing the players under the bus, because it's like, I told you. You're mad that he's throwing players under the bus. You're mad that they can't win big games. You're mad that there's quarterback regression. You're mad that they can't ever put it all together. And I'm like, yeah, you mean basically what I told you on that stupid show a few years ago when everybody got mad at me for? Like that? Like, he's that guy? I kind of told you. If you just would have listened to me, you might have saved yourself some embarrassment by saying mean, nasty, hateful things on the internet. And come to find out, the guy that you were mad at was right.
From Justin ND Sniper, if the defense plays well, but not great the rest of this season, what do you do if you're the head coach? Stay with Ash for potentially Carr's last season, or find a better defensive coordinator in hopes of a championship?
You got to get better at D coordinator, whether that's Chris Ash getting better or somebody else replacing him. But if it was up to me and I could have my way, and however it happens, I would think that a different coordinator would be the best move next year. Because if he goes out there and does well the rest of the year, okay, so against a bunch of inferior opponents, you were able to go shut them down, but you still got embarrassed by the two best opponents you played all year. Yeah, but that was early in the year when they were trying to – why were you trying to do that? Why were you trying to do that? Why didn't you slowly start to implement the changes you wanted to make, as opposed to just redoing the whole thing and then you got to spend the whole year fixing it? Like,
that's why it'll be very telling if Notre Dame does make the playoffs this year. Because if they do, that will be the next time they play an opponent, in theory, of equal or close to equal level of talent. And so if they are a team that, they beat up on Boise State and Boston College and Pitt and Stanford and Navy, and it looks great, but then they get into the playoffs and then they play like an Ole Miss on the road or something, and their defense looks like it did against A&M and looks like it did against Miami, then you have your answer.
I will say this, though, Trev. There are several offenses that if they basically just give up 13 points the rest of the way, you don't do that without making great improvements.
Oh, yeah.
You're not holding NC State, USC, Boston College, Syracuse by the time they get there. That offense will be a lot better by the time they get to that game. Navy, Pitt. If you're holding all those offenses that have good quarterbacks, good talent to 13 to 16, 17 points a game, you've done pretty well. I still don't know that I'm completely over the fact that, you made these mistakes. And then it would also be, why are they playing better? Are they just out-talenting people? Or are they actually coached better? Because if they're just out-talenting people, to your point, Trev, okay, I hope they don't get like an Oregon or an Ohio State or a team that can score and throw the ball in the playoffs, because then it could get ugly.
Mm-hmm. From Johnny S3, how crazy that Arkansas's athletic director stated in the Petrino press conference yesterday that the program didn't give Pittman enough resources to succeed at Arkansas.
Yeah. Whose job was that?
Bro, that was nuts. Like, out there talking about it like it was somebody else's problem. It's like, yeah, they just don't get the support. You're the guy.
Yeah.
You're it. What do you?
That's him blaming the boosters for
mm-hmm.
why they're failing instead of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if he didn't want to fire him and the boosters made him.
Mm.
Like, oh, now you guys want to give me money? Now you want to give me money to support? Yeah, okay.
Jason Rose, do you guys think it gets talked about enough about how good Marcus Freeman teams have been in noon kickoffs? They have not lost and have played really good football.
Well, I mean, I don't put a whole lot into it because I look back at who they've played. And, I mean, have they played a noon kickoff against anybody good?
I mean, was Clemson in 2023 a noon kickoff?
I don't think so. I think it was a 3:30 kickoff.
Okay.
I'll go look that up. But, trying to think.
I don't even know who else the noon kickoffs would have been.
They've had a couple. They're all road games, obviously. That game was let me see down here. That game was a noon kickoff, Trev. That was one. They didn't play well in that game. So last year, noon kickoffs, I'm trying to remember. Let me just go look up Notre Dame's schedule. It'll help me remember. So last year, 2024, They were not noon against A&M. They were not noon against – were they noon against Purdue? No, they weren't noon against Purdue, were they? Because I got home and it was – like I left the stadium, it was dark, so it definitely wasn't then. Was Georgia Tech a noon game? I don't think that game was a noon game, was it?
No, I don't think so. I think NC State was in 2023. I think Navy was in 2020 – or NC State
Navy was last year.
Navy 24.
Yeah, let me go down here. I think the Georgia Tech game was, that was a 3:30 kickoff. And Navy game in 2023, where was that game played? That was 2023 Ireland. Wasn't a new. Oh, that's right. Well, I guess it wasn't really, it was, I guess, noon there, but noon here, but not noon there. USC wasn't a noon game. 23, they lost at Clemson in a noon kickoff. NC State was a noon kickoff. 2022, that was such a weird weekend, such an awful weekend. The North Carolina game in 2022 was not a noon kickoff. I mean, what was the Syracuse game? That wasn't a.
I don't remember. I'm bad with remembering the indoor games.
Yeah, that was a noon kickoff as well. That was. Okay. Yep.
I mean,
so they've had some. They've been mostly good, but a couple ones that maybe weren't as good. So they have not lost. That would be a mistake because obviously the Clemson game in 2023 was a loss. They only lost once, but yeah. Jason said, not going to lie, I forgot about Clemson 2023. I didn't remember that game being a noon kickoff either. I thought it was later. I thought it was a 3:30 game as well, Jason, so you're not alone.
The only reason why I remember that being a noon game is I was at a buddy's house watching it. We had to go to the store at like 10:30 to get stuff for like pulled pork to make it back for noon kickoff. That's the only reason why I remember it.
I called Trev on my way to the Arkansas game. He's like, what did you make? Barbecue? What were you making?
I was making buffalo chicken dip at like 9:45 in the morning.
I'm like, it's a little early for me. He goes, well, I'm not going to eat it now. I said, no, that, man. It's just weird that we're sitting here getting.
It was weird. I sat down and I made some fried eggs for breakfast, and then I immediately started making buffalo chicken dip. It was awesome. My kitchen smelled wild for a minute there.
Oh man. All right, let's get to a couple more here, Trev, and then we're going to get out of here. Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker.
I love this question.
Names. Yeah,
I love that name, and I love this question. Who did you enjoy watching lose more, Brian Kelly or big game James Franklin? BK is old news to me, so I really enjoyed watching Franklin lose again.
It was a win-win. I enjoyed, I'll be honest with you. I think James Franklin team just got beat by the better team. I do. I don't think James Franklin's a great coach. I've made that very clear, but I just think Oregon's the better team. And I was impressed with how much Penn State battled back. They were down 17-3 and battled back. I mean, it was typical. You didn't play well in a big game for James Franklin, but I'd feel a lot better about Penn State right now than I do LSU.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
But no, look, there's nothing I enjoy more than watching Brian Kelly lose. And when it comes to college football, there's a lot of things in life I enjoy more than that. But when it comes to college football, other than anything good for Notre Dame, there's nothing in college football, not Notre Dame related, that I enjoy more than watching Brian Kelly lose. And then yelling at, like, they call a timeout, and he's just screaming at Garrett Nussmeier. Like, this is exactly why your quarterbacks shrink up in big moments, because they're so afraid of you losing your mind and acting like an irrational, mental, just head case, can't control my emotions, nut job, that they're afraid to make mistakes. That's why your quarterbacks regress, except when they have Mike Denbrock on their offense, and then, and you'll be okay. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoy watching Brian Kelly lose, because then I get to watch him embarrass himself in front of everybody again and again and again and again and again.
I don't know, man. As much as I love watching Brian Kelly lose, I also don't have, I guess I don't want to say like the previous relationship, but I didn't have the same exposure to him as what you guys did in the media. You know what I'm saying?
Especially me.
Yeah.
Because he did things behind the scenes to try to come at me.
Yeah. And
because I didn't join the company line and tell him he's special and hold his hand and give him softball questions. I'm not saying other people did that. I'm just saying that was the expectation of me. And
but I thoroughly enjoyed watching Penn State lose another big one because they were at home, and man, Penn State fans were talking that talk after beating the Indianapolis School for the Blind and my intramural college football team, flag football team.
Yeah.
So that was awesome. Just and then you had like in College Game Day, everybody bought into it. Like I know they're supposed to be like relatively unbiased. You play into the home crowd a little bit, but like all the commentators wore white for the whiteout, and it's like,
it was ridiculous.
Like, all right, sounds good. I was very happy to see Penn State and James Franklin lose again, and then watching all of Penn State social media fall apart. Before the game, it was always, this is it, this is the year, and then it was basically just again.
Yeah.
How does this happen again? It's like, well, I mean, if you're basically anybody outside of Happy Valley, you're not surprised that this happened.
Right.
But I loved it. It was great.
Their fan base is nuts. It's one of the weirdest fan bases around. It really is. So knowing they're in misery makes me happy. Honestly, I liked LSU a lot before Brian Kelly went there.
Me too.
Now, I don't have a lot of respect for their fan base now because of some of the things that I've had to, deal with the last few years, including another one that got triggered on Sunday, which was freaking hilarious. It was so funny. This one LSU fan just lost his mind. It was great. But I've soured a little bit on that fan base. But I used to love LSU. They were one of my top 5 teams that I'd always root for as long as they weren't playing Notre Dame. And but I enjoy watching them lose now. Just because for me, it's also like told you. I've tried to warn you. You didn't want to listen. You want to get mean. You want to get personal. And this is kind of, just what I told you is going to happen. That's what I told you is going to happen.
Tristan Shout, also known as Rocks in the Box, a.k.a. Tristan 1776. Who owns the ACC this year? Sure as heck ain't Clemson. Who does it come down to? Florida State and Georgia Tech? Who's the next man up?
I mean, we just writing off Miami all of a sudden?
I was just about to say.
Did we forget about Miami there, Tristan? Are you still thinking they're in the Big East? I mean, look, right now, Miami's the team to beat in the ACC.
Yeah.
As far as like how they've looked, they've got 2 pretty good wins so far. Beat a good Notre Dame team and then a convincing win over Florida. Like, they're the team to beat. I think it's them. I mean, like Florida State's still in it. That's 1 loss. Florida State wins the rest of their games. They're playing for the ACC title. Georgia Tech wins the rest of their games. If Virginia wins there's still a lot of teams in it. As far as like who has the roster, who has the schedule, Miami, Florida State, Georgia Tech, probably at the top. SMU still in it. SMU's got 2 losses. Only, I think, one of them was in conference, or was neither of them in conference? They lost to Baylor and TCU, right? So I don't know that. Has SMU played a conference game yet? Yeah, they lost to Baylor and TCU. They haven't even played a conference game yet. So they're still in it too. They get Miami at home. They got to play at Clemson. So, they're still in it. So the ACC is still wide open, to Trevor's point. But if you're right now today, who's the team to beat? Miami. Miami's the team to beat. They're undefeated in the league. They played 1 game, right? Didn't they play 1? No, they haven't played a conference game yet. But their next game's against Florida State. Like, that's going to be the big game for them. It's looking a little bit tougher now, though, Trev, because they got to go to Florida State. And it's like, you're watching that game if you're Miami. If you're a rational Miami fan, you're like, man, seriously? Come on, Virginia. Now we get a pissed off Florida State? Thanks a lot. But they can still win that game. But that's going to be a very interesting.
From Michael Lynch, should the FBS reduce the number of programs and or disallow FBS teams to play FCS opponents going forward in the 12-16 team college football playoff?
No. No, look, I've said this before. I don't have a problem with teams playing an FCS opponents. I think there are some FCS opponents they shouldn't play, but I have no problem with Clemson playing South Carolina State and getting more money to that program. One FCS opponent does not make your schedule weak. It's when you play an FCS opponent like Penn State did, and then you play a bunch of other trash in your non-conference. That's what I don't respect. But, there's a year trying to see. There's a year where Georgia plays Ohio State and Georgia Tech in their non-conference. And let me find it. It's let me see here. Here we go. It's 2030. They play Clemson, Ohio State, and Georgia Tech non-conference, and then North Carolina A&T. Now, one of those games is going to have to get dropped, because that's 4 non-conferences and they can have 4. But let's just, for making argument's sake, I have zero problem with Georgia, who has to play Ohio State, Clemson, and Georgia Tech in their non-conference, playing the worst FCS team on the planet, whoever that might be, in their other non-conference. No problem. None whatsoever. Now, if they played North Carolina State, Utah State, Kent State, and Akron in their non-conference, yeah, that's a joke. So I don't mind the FCS thing. I don't mind that. Like, if you don't know who a team is after 12 games because they played an FCS team at one point in time, then that's not a team that should be in the playoffs. Like, I have no problem with that. Like Georgia last year. Didn't Georgia play an FCS team last year? I could be wrong. Let me pull up their schedule from last year. They played some terrible teams non-conference. Tennessee Tech. That's right. They did. I didn't care one bit, because they also had to play Clemson, nor did I care that they played UMass. Why? Because they also played Clemson and Georgia Tech in the non-conference, on top of playing at Bama, at Texas, at Ole Miss, home against Tennessee, and home against Florida, or a neutral site against Florida in their conference schedule. Play whatever bum you want outside of Clemson and Georgia Tech. Dude, you can go play a D3 school for all I care. Like, with that schedule, that one game doesn't mean, well, do we really know how good Georgia is? Yeah, we kind of do. What the concern, though, Michael, is when you get some of these teams, and this is the danger of the massive conferences, because there's years where teams play weak schedules in their league and then play that kind of mess like Penn State played in their non-conference, and you really don't know how good a team is. So I think as long as it's scheduled properly, like if you're going to play, here's what I think you should do. There should be a rule that says you have to, if you're going to play an FCS team, you have to play at least one Power 4 opponent in your non-conference. And I would even go so far as, if I was a team, I would say, look, you have to play at least one Power 4 conference that on the aggregate has been a top 25 team in the last 5 years. Like, you could do something where you balance that out, but like, in theory, I have no problem with FCS playing FCS schools for a lot of the schools. Like, but it's mostly the state. I don't want Notre Dame playing FCS school. There's no FCS school that makes sense for Notre Dame. Like if USC played UC Davis, I wouldn't care, as long as their other non-conference games, they're still playing Notre Dame and they got to play Auburn in the non-conference like they did back then. Fine, go play UC Davis. I don't care if you want to play an FCS team. It's a state. It's not USC's not a state school, but it's a school in your state. You're helping out a school in the state. Your president's good friends with their presidents, and you're hooking them up and getting them a payday, and your team gets an easy win. Oh, okay. As long as the rest of your schedule's legit, I have no problem with Georgia. Back in the day, would play Georgia Southern when they were in FCS school. For number one, FCS, they were usually really good at the FCS level. So playing North Dakota State's going to be tougher than playing a lot of G5 teams in certain leagues. I'd have more respect for you playing Georgia State. North Dakota State or James Madison back when they were FCS, or South Dakota State or a team like that, than I do you playing Kent State or Akron. So, I'd have a lot more respect for Ohio State playing Youngstown State back when they were really good than I would for them playing most of the MAC teams. So it just depends, Michael, on what the rest of the schedule is. But the other thing is, it's good for Ohio State to play those MAC teams. They're all part of the same school system. So you're taking that money and you're getting it to another school in the system. That's a good thing. I mean, it's a good, smart business decision. And that's why I said I've never busted Ohio. Rarely do I ever bust Ohio State's, what's about their schedule. Because they'll play some, couple MAC teams. Well, so what? They are also playing Oklahoma on the road in their non-conference on top of 9 conference games where they got to play Penn State, Michigan State, and Michigan every year. So what if they got to play Youngstown State or something like that and a couple MAC teams? So what? Because I'm looking forward to that game where they're going to Norman, which they've done recently, or Notre Dame, or USC, or Texas, or Georgia. All teams that they're going to be playing, have played, or will play in the next bit. You've never heard me bust LSU's nuts about playing an FCS team because they normally schedule really tough outside of that. Same thing with Georgia. You've never heard me be like, man, Georgia, the schedule Georgia had in 2023 was terrible. That wasn't their fault. They were supposed to play Oklahoma, and the SEC nixed the game, and they couldn't get it. They had to get some bad team to replace it. That's not their fault. They still had to play Georgia Tech. So I like the intent. I don't think you need to reduce the number of programs, Michael. What I would do is I would have an FCS playoff. I would have a group of 5 playoff. I'd have an 8-team group of 5 playoff. That's what I would do. Thank you, Christopher Galloway, a.k.a. Black Irish 864 with Super Chat. Great show as usual. Thank you so much, my friend. Christopher, I'm very curious if you're going to be making it up for one of those 2 games we're out tailgating. I had a chance to finally meet Christopher last year at Miami. We were here with his lovely bride. We got a chance to meet them at the tailgate we did, or not the tailgate. It was the get-together we did the night before the Orange Bowl. So it's always nice getting to meet people. Like, them, but you don't know them. It's just always cool to meet them.
Robert Bishop, with the way the climate of college football has changed, do you think a running back will ever win the Heisman Trophy again?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. If it wasn't for the fact that there was a unique 2-sport guy who was literally playing at an all-American level as a corner and receiver, you'd have had one last year.
Yep.
Yeah. I still think Ashton Genty should have won, but I said, look, I'd have voted for Ashton Genty. I had no problem with Travis Hunter winning it. Was Travis Hunter the best DB in the country? No. Was he the best receiver in the country? No. Was he top 5 to 10 in both? Heck yeah. And that's a rare thing to do. I had no problem with him winning it. I just would have voted for somebody else. Absolutely, I think a running back can win it. I don't know if one will anytime soon, but yeah, a running back will win it. And look, it's not like college football is still a sport where teams run the ball. This isn't the NFL. You still have teams running the football. I mean, the kid at Missouri has got over 700 yards in 5 games and 9 touchdowns. You do that if Jeremiah Love had those numbers, he'd be the Heisman favorite right now.
And even the best teams in the NFL still run the football.
Yep.
Andrew Porter, I know I'm being a boomer, but does anyone else notice the majority of the defense has their shirts untucked and seem a little sloppy? Does it even matter anymore?
Hey, Boomer, I just want to remind you, go back and watch the 1988 team. You saw way more Chris Zorch's stomach than you probably wanted to see back then. That's not new. I have no problem with it. It's annoying when I'm breaking the game down and I can't tell this in 8 or 9, but I don't have a problem with that. It's college football. I've always kind of liked the fact that college football hasn't had the same uniformity rules that the NFL does. Now, that's partly because when I played college football, I was one of those guys that liked to, I was one of those look good, feel good, play good guys. You know what I mean, Trev? So I had no problem with it. But the thing that bothers me is the fact that they just don't wear knee pads anymore. That just seems a little I got a picture of Malachi Fields from the game on Saturday, and I'm like, dude, that's what we wore on Thursday practices when we were in shells. That's what DBs and that's what skill players wear nowadays. It's crazy. But no, it doesn't bother me. I mean, again, go back to if you're a boomer, what your boomers are what, one generation in front of me, right? Or is it 2 generations in front of me? It's basically my dad's age. So when you were kind of in your 20s, go back and watch the Notre Dame teams from the late 80s. I mean, Chris Zorch would have a lot. I mean, they always had that. Rocket would have that sometimes. They would always have that stuff. I had no problem with it. I don't mind a little bit of individuality with how you dress, as long as it's not stupid and flamboyant, or dangerous. If I'm Malik Murphy, I'm sorry, your hair should not be that long. It's dangerous. You know, not to mention like that's got to be annoying with all that stuff going around. But like somebody's going to, you know, eventually you're going to get that caught in somebody's jersey or you know, like one of the things on a guy's helmet. Just it's going to hurt potentially. But I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it. What about you, Trev?
I honestly could care less what people wear on game day. That's just me. I mean,
I just want it to be your team colors. That's all. Yeah, that's why I hate college basketball. You watch these teams that like have like fluorescent green shoes and their school colors are yellow and red. It's like, dude, no.
Yeah, I was the same way of like on the field, like I guess you could call them accessories. I guess the cool kids now call it drip. I was a big on-field drip guy.
Makes no sense. I don't know how that word even fits there. It makes no sense.
So, but you know, like I spat at every game. I had a visor. I had an arm sleeve, but that was like legit because like my elbow was messed up. But like, you know, it's never bothered me. The untucked stuff, that doesn't bother me at all. I mean, yeah. In the grand scheme, I think as long as it looks relatively clean, I'm cool with it.
Like I said, all I care about is that guys don't have colors that aren't the school colors. That's all I care about. Yep. Like Notre Dame Saturday, guys had different color cleats on. That doesn't bother me.
The only other thing that bothers me is when numbers don't really make sense. Like when Shea Patterson was like 21 at quarterback, I hated that.
Or watching Bear Bachmeier, number 47.
47, yeah, like that stuff bothers me. And again, no reason to, but like that bothers me more than untucked shirts.
I will say this. I personally would like all players to wear the same colored shoes, but it doesn't bother me that they don't. As a coach, I would say, look, you've got your shoe deal. You've got your shoe deal. I don't care. Have that company make you green cleats. This is the color cleats we're wearing for road games, or gold cleats, or black, or whatever, or white. I would like that, but it doesn't bother me that it's not that way.
Sure,
because it's not a rule. This thing is, they're not a rule. They're not rules. Just have your school colors. That's all I really ultimately care about. Same thing with gloves and wristbands. Just have your school colors. Like I was never an eye black guy. It doesn't bother me that guys wear that stuff. You know, but yeah, when I got moved to receiver. So this was back in the 90s. So this is like Charles Woodson, Peter Warwick were the two guys that like two of my favorite players, non-Notre Dame players. So I had the wristbands on my elbow. And then like Peter Warwick, I wore my, because I didn't like, you know me, Trev. I don't like chains. I don't wear a watch. I don't wear my wedding ring because I have this thing. I don't know what it is. It's never been diagnosed, but like I don't like things being tight on my body. So I wear loose clothes. Like I get real uncomfortable, almost like kind of claustrophobic if I have tight things on. So that's why I don't wear watches and things like that. So I didn't love, like even when I played, I didn't love having like really tight gloves on. So I would always either get bigger gloves, but then I would like just kind of undo them and they'd be looser. But then Peter Warwick made that cool. He kind of flipped them up. You remember that? Oh, you probably don't remember that. That's when you were born. God, I'm sitting there talking about when I was a freshman in college and it's the year you were born.
I mean, Jeff Samardzija did that too. I've seen it.
Yeah. But like, I thought that was cool. So yeah. And like one year, actually the game I scored 5 touchdowns in high school, I had one royal blue sock all the way up and the other one down. And then my buddy Sean had the opposite. So he had his right one up and his like that kind of thing. So yeah, just, that's always been kind of I've always liked looking good. Same with baseball. You know, I just look good, feel good, play good. That's how I thought. You know, but I also grew up, you know, rooting for the Fab Five, and you know, so I always kind of like the statements with those kind of things. As long as it's the school colors, that's like what I've said with a lot of things, like alternate uniforms. As long as it's the school colors, I don't care. If you want to wear black and you play at Texas Tech and you want to go all black, go for it. Cool. You know, if you're at Oklahoma State and you want to wear all black, cool. It's kind of a significant part of your school colors. If you want to go all black at Notre Dame, that's dumb. Michigan, that's dumb. You know, like that's just dumb. Georgia wants to do it. I don't like it, but okay, cool. Actually, there was one time Georgia wore black uniforms with the red helmets. I thought that looked pretty sweet. I would only do it once, but that's part of their school colors. If Alabama does it, that's lame. So it just depends on whether or not it's part of your school colors.
Yeah.
It's like, what if Ohio State came out and we're all green? People are like, well, that's stupid. It's not even your school colors. Well, why is it cool then to wear black if black's not part of your school colors?
Because it's neutral.
It's neutrally lame. Wear it if it's part of your school colors. So that's my personal pet peeve. But that's the color thing is really the only one that bothers me. But yeah, because I like doing my own thing with how I dressed. But you kind of stop thinking about that once you get to the game, though. But that's in the locker room. You're all worried about that stuff. And then you get out the field and you're just worried about playing ball. So somebody said it's Ace 454 ND. The only thing that bothers me in CFP is duplicate numbers. That I agree with. I liked the day where everybody had their own number. You had 99 numbers. You have 85 guys on scholarship. Like, everybody gets your own number. But I also understand that it's just different now. But yes, I think it's dumb that you have to have you have to put a separate jersey on to be on kickoff team because you got two guys with the same number. Just get different numbers. Get your own number. But everybody wants that single digit number now and all that kind of stuff. But, I'm with you on that one. So that's it, Trev. That'll do it for today, man.
Well, listen, folks, another fun show. Be sure here in about 10 minutes, IB Nation Sports Beat goes live. So make sure to hop over and check the guys out on the evening show. Brian and I will be back tomorrow to dive more into the Boise State Notre Dame matchup. But until then, on your way out of here, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure that notification bell is hit so you know whenever we go live. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So until tomorrow, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. See you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.